might do some more investigation into that before. All right, we're live.
Perfect.
Sweet. Cool. This week's episode of Here's How I Get is brought to you in part by the Mayflower. The Mayflower bringing the right kind of people to the Americas since 16 whatever. Hola and bienvenido, mi amigos. Welcome back to Here's What I Don't Get, from north to south, east to west, the only intercontinental podcast to tackle all of life's toughest issues. I am your host, Tab Burton. With me today from the great nation of Paraguay, it is Chaco. Welcome back, Chaco.
Hola, mi hinchada. Thanks for bringing me back, man. I almost for a second thought that we were actually going to be doing the whole show in Espanol. You psyched me out there for a second. I was going to have to bust out my Spanish-English dictionary and, try to up my game a bit here.
Mi Espanol es soy no bueno.
Soy no bueno. That's perfect. You know, man, bad Spanish is one of my favorite types of Spanish.
It's the only Spanish that I know. And saca la basura and fuego. That's all you really need to know when you work in a restaurant.
Well, see, down here, I've got all these like Spanish cheat codes, right? So I know how to kind of fake my way through a lot of these conversations. But like Paraguayan Spanish, if you were going to learn Spanish in any country in the world, is probably the worst place that you could possibly learn it, because it's a bilingual country, and it's not like bilingual Spanish and English. It's Spanish and this other language called Guarani, and Guarani is like a really nasal sounding. There's no way I can make it work. I try to make nice with my neighbors who only speak Guarani, and it doesn't work so well. But there's these, it's very nasal sounding, and it's mai chapa, that's that's kind of how you talk in Guarani. But the thing is that there's this middle in between language that they call chopara. And Chopara is not quite Spanish, and it's not quite Guarani, and it's not quite legible by any foreigner whatsoever. And so I remember this one time when we went to Iguazu Falls, which is phenomenal. It's one of the world's wonders. What was it? Eleanor Roosevelt, when she first saw Iguazu Falls, she said, "Oh, poor Niagara." That was her reaction. It's "Oh, poor Niagara." It's just such an amazing waterfall. But when we went there, we were staying at this hotel, and it was the first time I ever realized I could truly speak Spanish, because there were these other tourists that were there from other countries that have way more neutral Spanish, like Ecuador and Colombia and Chile and Argentina. And I turned to my wife and I'm elbowing her. I'm like, is it just me, or can I understand everything that those people are saying? She's like, yeah, this is nuts. And then we came back to Paraguay and we couldn't understand a word again. And when we moved here again during when the COVID was still still in full effect, everybody's wearing the masks, right? And a lot of the stuff you would do over the phone, but these morons be wearing the mask and on the phone, and they mumble when they talk already. So it was basically every single conversation was and we would be just please just text me, and I'll talk to you through text. And so we got through with WhatsApp, because down here WhatsApp is more useful than any other app. Unfortunately, I hate WhatsApp, but that's the one you got to use down here. Every business uses WhatsApp, and so that's how we got through. What's that?
Every scammer, they always they'll message you on Instagram or Facebook or something. They'll be like, "We have this great opportunity for investing in Bitcoin, but to tell you more, send me your WhatsApp handle." And it's oh yeah, you know what? How about no?
Well, that was the thing. I have clients in Canada who are like super paranoid about like all things like security wise, right? Like it's like, make sure, we sign this NDA and don't put any of this information out before it's like time, like before the press release goes out, like everything's like timed and everything's like super secure. And we use like, super encrypted like folders to pass information back and forth. But then they like bring on new clients and we're all like in a group chat on WhatsApp. And I'm like, guys, like WhatsApp's been like hacked like at least 1 million times. It's worse than the FTX back end,
owned by Facebook.
Like, yeah, no kidding. It is. And like I use Signal. I know Signal's not even great anymore. I got friends who want me to go over to like Telegram, and I've tried going to Telegram, but there's this other one. I got this buddy who works in cybersecurity, and he was like, oh, Signal, WhatsApp, Telegram. He's all crusty about it. He's like, all those are just total child's play, rookie stuff. We got to go to Threema. I was like, what the heck is Threema? And like, so Threema is like, you don't have to put any of your information in to get an account. You don't have to do any of that. And then in order for me to get your contact on my phone to be secure, we have to like be in the same room and like scan each other's phones. Yeah, basically. And then after that, we're fine. It's like, I don't know how comfortable I am with that. And he's like, it's what the terrorists use. It's what the terrorists use. So I was like, well, if it's good enough for the terrorists, then I guess it's good enough for us.
Hi, I'm Osama bin Laden with Al Qaeda. Are you looking for a secure way to message your friends?
Well, this is the thing, right? Like, I mean, if you look at, the terrorists have it good in some ways. Like, so I'm living in Paraguay, and like the most badass vehicle on the roads down here is the Toyota Hilux.
Yeah.
Right. And the Toyota Hilux, they don't have those in Canada, but they're definitely here. And those things can go over everything, and they run on like the shittiest fuel that you could possibly get, like, Paraguayan gasoline, the kind of stuff that'll kill any other engine. That's the go-to vehicle here. So it's like, get me okay, fine. I'll contact you on Threema. I'll pick you up in my Hilux, and I'll set my what is it, the Timex, the regular or Casio black watch that they all used to. Yeah, I'll get all 3 of those and I'm good to go. So yeah, now we're on a watch list. Thanks.
I've been on a watch list for a long, long time, I'm sure. Ever since that rally for America. Well, I have some really good news. I got accepted to college again. I'm now 3 for 3 on applying to colleges. Shocking.
Nice. So is this the glass blowing?
Yeah, I had to get accepted as a student to the Southern Illinois University to be able to continue taking these classes. So I got accepted, and I finally enrolled today. They actually opened up space in the class so that I could take the class. I impressed the teachers that much.
Do you cross state lines to go and blow glass?
I do.
Southern. Oh, wow. You bring your weapon with you every time you do it too?
Of course not. Not into Illinois, where you can't carry a gun anywhere. I absolutely wouldn't take my gun to Illinois, where I'm in far greater risk of being shot than in St. Louis, where I can.
Saying something
in St. Louis, where I can constitutionally carry, versus Illinois, where you have to like go through this whole stupid process. And so, for some reason, I know that this is kind of wild. East St. Louis, just on the other side of the river, is one of the most crime-ridden per capita areas in the United States, and it's somewhat rural. But then you look at St. Louis and Missouri, where you have constitutional carry, and it is there's a lot of crime because it's a city. But for some reason, that's a lot lower than East St. Louis. I'm not like a scientist, but I'm looking at these parallels and thinking maybe something's fucked up in one side and not fucked up in the other. But I would never. You would never
imply any of the. Yeah, it's not demographically different in any way. I mean, it's one state, right? So
yeah, it's just a river, and I of course would not smuggle weapons across state lines. That would be wrong.
Yes,
and I'm definitely not a person who would break the law under any circumstances.
See, back in Canada, so we have gun control up there, and it got worse after I left because like they're basically just like getting rid of all handguns.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and so we had what's called a PAL. And I think it stands for like
personal arms license.
Personal arms license. And then you have an RPAL, which was the restricted PAL, And I remember when I was like looking at them, I was like, to get the R PALs, like you got to go for 2 days in a row. But like if you go for the PAL, it's like 1 day in a row. And when I go out shooting with like my brother and my buddies and stuff, like generally speaking, we'd never, because you can't bring handguns out. Like the handguns are practically like in your home or at the shooting range. And that's it. You can't have them in your car. Like if you are going to go from point A to point B, just like, let's say you're moving, you have to like contact the RCMP ahead of time to say, I am moving. I'm going from this place to that place. And I'm going to take this long and during this window of time.
We're taking this route.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like it's just ridiculous. So when I looked at that, I was like, well, look, like there was a big thing over gun registries, right? Because like what ends up happening is if there's like, you know, a natural disaster or something, suddenly all of a sudden the RCMP are like right there at the doorstep to make sure they get all those guns safely out of the house. And, you know, sometimes, you know, they allegedly get planted at like border towns. But anyways, like so I didn't have my PAL yet and COVID hit. So I remember I was trying to like find like an instructor that was still like going. Like this was like during like lockdown Arama, you know, like where nothing was happening. And I found one. I had to drive 2 hours to like this small town, and it was in this guy's like house, and he was like this former RCMP guy. And it was like 8 of us in there, but we had to wear the mask the entire day. Now, I have so much sympathy for all the people that had to like work full days, full shifts, full work days with that mask on. I couldn't cut it. I couldn't cut it. I've broken my nose twice, and so I have like, you know, some breathing issues through my nose, so it's like all through my mouth. And like with the mask, it's the worst. It's just the worst. So that was like my first time in a whole day with the mask on. The only other time I had the mask on for a whole day was flying to Paraguay, right? Because like every time we were going on the plane, like, and like most of the planes were cool, but like, you know, on the last leg, they were, you know, the stewardesses were like, you know, getting mad if it was like under your nose a bit, or if you like, they wanted you to put it up between bites of your food. And I was like, nah, that's not happening. That's just not going to happen. But like, I remember getting that PAL, and I was so happy about it. I immediately celebrated by buying an SKS, and then after that, I got a 12 gauge Winchester. Unfortunately, I couldn't bring any of them with me, so I ended up I had them for basically like about like 8 months, and then I sold them, and then came down here. It was a totally different process. Yes, they have gun licenses here, but unfortunately, you have to reapply for a gun license for each gun. Oh. So like every gun you get has to go through this, like you have to wait for this long period of time. So now all I have is I have a another 12 gauge, but it's like a brand. It's like a brand I'd never heard of before. They're from Brazil, called Boito, and it's one of those ones where you look it up, and I always love when you look up something you haven't heard of before. Oh, we got cat cam going on. Yeah. Every time when you look up something you never heard of before, and you see the, like, you know, the link that says like blank thing, the best that you have never heard of. And that's the one that I got. It's the same thing as like with my truck. So I have a Mahindra, which is like made in India, and it's such a ugly, amazing, badass truck. And then again, when I looked it up, there was like all these like videos of like Aussies, like, and South Africa guys, like talking up this truck like it's the greatest thing ever, because they're like super cheap and they run forever and they run on the crappy gas, and you can go on all types of roads. Like, I mean, it's not a comfy ride, but you know, it'll get you from point A to point B without you having to call the RCMP and tell them you got a handgun in the leg in the front. So anyways, well, so when do you start these classes up officially then?
January.
Oh, okay.
It's a spring semester thing, but yeah, anyway. Well, the only other thing I want to talk about is today I'm drinking some street whiskey.
Street whiskey?
Yeah, I was walking to my car today to leave work, and it wasn't a bad day, but it was kind of, there's a lot going on. And I looked down on the ground, and what is laying there but one of those like slightly bigger than an airplane bottle of Glenmorangie Lasanta 12-year sherry cask aged whiskey. And if there's like, I love whiskey. Everybody's listening to this show for more than 10 minutes knows that. But sherry cask finished Scotch is like primo. I love cask. So I found this in the street and I was like, well, I'm fucking drinking this. So this is my street
Nice.
whiskey. Yeah.
Nice. And it smelled right. Like it wasn't, it was nothing
Yeah.
wrong with it. It
The
wasn't
bottle
cut or
wasn't
something.
the cap had been kind of smashed. So if you like flipped it over and flipped it back, it would dribble out a little bit. But
Okay.
other than that, it was pretty okay shape. So
You know what? I think for one of our future episodes, I'm gonna pull the old like the best whiskey you've never heard of. I'll see what I can find around these parts, and if there's anything that doesn't get sold up there, at least I'll impress you with the label, because they have some crazy names for things down here. But yeah, I'm not drinking anything other than the water tonight, unfortunately. See, the problem with Sunday, like on Sunday, we're recording this on Monday, but on Sunday, I drive 2 hours to get to Mass, and then we drive 2 hours back after we've kind of spent the day in the capital for a bit, and it throws everything off because we got to get up super early. We drive, we don't eat before Mass, so then we go to get all the way, get to Mass. Then afterwards, there's like a social, and the social always has like cheese bun things and like sweets and like nothing of like with proper fiber or like the vegetables, no fruits or anything like that. So then you get out of there, you go do your round of like I could usually pick up packages and stuff like that while we're there, and then we gotta like go grab some sort of lunch on the way back, and everything's like frantic food. So it's like every Sunday I'm basically like doing the whole like like when you're going through like airports and like everything's closed. It's kind of like that. so no all I've got is the Chaco Springs water that comes from our natural aquifer. We got 7 on my property alone. I got blessed with 7 natural wells that I didn't have to drill or anything. They just come straight up out of the ground. And you can, one of these days I'll send you a video of it, because it's like you can actually just see our water coming out, and that's what we just basically grab right
plug
from
into that.
Yeah, it's perfect. And the when I was listening to the episode with you and Buck, we were talking about water pressure. Man, I feel that because the only problem I have is when we don't have power, I don't have water, right? Like, because that's how I get my water out. So I mean, I have a water tank that we have about 1,000. Yeah, I think we have about 1,000 liters in our tank, and that's fine and all, but like it's not the best pressure. It's not, and we have to get really sparing with it because 1,000 liters will go on you really quickly. Unfortunately, it's just like one kid forgets and has like a shower, and you're like, now we don't have water for like 3 days until the power comes back on. But at least this time around, because like the last time we tried to record together, I have power, and I also have internet, like real internet this time, so we can see each other. And because like that was the problem the last time when we were trying to record the first take. I started like you started the show, and you gave me the like you did the intro, and then I started talking, and then I was throwing stuff at you, and then it you couldn't hear me, or it was like a delay, so it looked like you were just like no selling me, like just
the like, entire time.
Yeah, and I was like, did I offend him? And he's like, this is his way of telling me like, no, this is not gonna. I was like, I didn't even remember what I said. This time it works, and it's and last time around, my sister was like texting me, was like, we're watching, and I had to tell her after, like, it didn't work. So everybody's had a chance to do a do-get this month.
Yes, because it is No Hate November by Spy Producer Request. November. We did the whole month of November, only do-gets. And this is the last official episode of No Hate November. So, Joel, what is your do-get this month?
Here's what I do get. Hays Code movies. Are you familiar with the Hays Code?
It sounds familiar, but refresh my memory.
Okay, so during the period of, well, technically, like it kind of got underway in 1934. but it really got underway about 1938 to 1964. But if you really are watching carefully, it was kind of really going downhill in the 50s. But what the Hays Code era was, or what they call the motion picture code, was a response to the smut that was coming out in the 20s and 30s. And I'm like, like people don't know this, but there was a lot of like total degenerate silent films that were coming out of Hollywood at the time. Like, I mean, it was kind of like if you think about like the Weimar Republic, like people always think about like, Nazi Germany, the book burnings and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, if you look at what they were burning, it wasn't they were just like it wasn't just like they were really burning, like just anything, right? They were really burning some pretty. Let's just say your kids didn't need to see what they were burning, right? And that was in the schools. So the Hays Code was done in response because, well, you and I. On back channels today, we were having a little bit of a disagreement about whether or not boycotts take or boycotts work. And I hear what you're saying. And what you were saying is like, people boycott things and then like, after a little while, they just forget and they just go back, or, they don't care. People don't really stick to these things, right? But there was a time where they did. There was a time where boycotts worked. And as myself, as a good Catholic boy that I am, the Hays Code was in response to what was the national. It was a what was it? The Defense League or something. It was a Catholic group of people who were like, these movies are horrible. Like, these are really doing a number on our kids, and they're doing a number on our society, and like, we're just not going to go to them anymore. So instead of like, doing something ridiculous like lobbying, like what we were doing in Canada, like lobbying the government to put a law in, Hollywood was like, oh no, like we can't lose all the Catholics. Like, we can't lose the Catholics from all these things. We need to self-govern ourselves. So the Hays Code put into place a set of kind of, I'm going to say loose rules, but they were rules that everybody had to go by in order to get a seal that would, and the seal would go up before every movie. And it was kind of the precursor to like the rating system that we have now. But like, again, this system would not work today.
I disagree. I think this system is in effect today.
Okay.
I think this system still exists today, except now, instead of like legislating,
I see where
smut
you're going with
and cursing.
It has to go the other way.
Now it's like you have to have a gay person, you have to have a trans person, you have to have a person of color in your main lead. Your movie has to preach communist and socialist values. Your movie has to have a message that's anti-men, specifically anti-white men. Your movie cannot offend anything that has to do with Judaism. And if it brings up Judaism, it must then also be about how the Holocaust is bad. Like,
exactly.
This code still exists. It's just now the complete opposite. And they're not putting a seal on the front of the movie. But like, look at what Hollywood is churning out these days. Like, there's definitely a definition of what is acceptable parameters of film, because they think that there is a segment of the audience that will only see these types of movies, and that's why movies are terrible.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, okay, so going back to what you were saying, like, I mean, for example, like a certain character comes on screen and they have to be portrayed in a certain light, right? Like, they have to be. But in the Hays Code, for example, okay, so like some of the examples of the Hays Code, like breaking the law and getting away with it. Okay. So like, I mean, a lot of the tropes of like the good guys always win, and like, the sheriff always gets his man and all this kind of stuff, that comes from the Hays Code. So like, basically
the Hays Code, that was like Marlon Brando wearing an A shirt in, is it Streetcar Named Desire? That was like, oh my God, he's not wearing long sleeves.
Yeah.
That was that era.
Well, and that was okay. So this is the thing. I'm not like super duper draconian. I'm not like sitting there and going like, oh, that skirt's a little too high over the knee, Missy. You know, what I love about the Hays Code movies is the creativity that spawned from it. Now, now, for example, you couldn't portray adultery, right? Or if you did, you absolutely could not portray it in a good light. And so if you look at one of the greatest movies of all time, Casablanca. Okay. I love Casablanca. Casablanca is a fantastic, almost near perfect movie. And if you didn't have the Hays Code, Rick and Ilsa end up back together again, right? And then it's a complete change of the one of the greatest film endings of all time, right? So if you don't have the Hays Code in, right, then Rick and Elsa get together again and like chow to the other guy and like, and they would just be mentioning about how they were like, you know, like they were fucking the whole time when they're in Paris, when they're in, we'll always have, you know, like their whole history was done in nuance. That's what I love about the Hays Code. The Hays Code also had what we had what was called screwball comedies, right? So screwball comedies were generally like, you know, it was so much innuendo, but done so cleverly that like you could watch it with your kids and they won't pick up on it. And it won't be even in that like direct over the, like that ham-fisted, ha ha ha, we're going to make the adults laugh Pixar sort of way. Like these are things that were like just like facial expressions and like just little like tiny things that they would do to kind of send this message across. And the thing is that when you watch these things, it was a way to kind of keep society from completely going down the degenerate road that we're on right now. And it did the trick for a good chunk of time. Now, as it was going away, they would find the holes, the loopholes to get in there as much as they could. And so, like, for example, there's certain movies that were released during the Hays Code, but did not get the stamp of approval, but still ended up becoming huge hits. So for the best example of that would be Some Like It Hot, starring Marilyn Monroe, Jack Lemmon, and Tony Curtis, I think. It's actually a movie I haven't seen, but I know of it, you know, and I know that kind of the premise behind it, and it was a huge hit. But like that, you know, in it, the two main characters, I believe, are like on the run and they have to dress in drag to get away, you know. So like, you know, they had to do the thing that Dave Chappelle would not do, you know, he would not put on the dress.
Yeah.
So, but this was like, you know, a big deal at the time. And Marilyn Monroe was mostly popular because of the fact of these innuendos in these movies. A lot of these things were like, it was just right on the cusp, but not quite there. So like, you have to kind of think about the short period of time between once the Hays Code fell, and then you got like Deep Throat, and you got Behind the Green Door. So, but like flat out porno, you know, in the movie theaters. And it's funny because you bring up about, well, you brought up about in the last episode when you were talking about The Patient, and you're talking about the precursors. If you're going to mention a certain tribe of people, you have to do it with this certain thing mentioned. So the movie that broke the Hays Code was a movie by the name of The Pawnbroker. Are you familiar with this movie?
Nope,
because it's completely and totally forgettable. And The Pawnbroker, being completely and totally anti-Catholic, it was based on they were trying to push the envelope as much as possible. And one of the things in the Hays Code was you couldn't show boobs. Couldn't show a nipple, couldn't show boobs. It was like Instagram. And so basically like,
Joel, I got an Instagram message earlier this week. One of my favorite things is fucking with scammers. And so I got this message on Instagram that was like about something. And my favorite thing to these scammers is to say, show tits. And this person sent me a picture of their butthole. And I was just like, what the hell?
That's not what I asked for.
Way over the top.
So I never saw The Patient, which you just described in the last episode, but
I wouldn't recommend it.
I can imagine it's the same thing. It's the same sort of thing. So like, the pawnbroker comes out and they're like, we gotta get boobs in movies. We gotta somehow get some boobs in the movies. We gotta get some boobs in movies. But how are we gonna get the boobs in movies? Well, it needs to be an important movie. It needs to be a real important movie. You know, it can't just be random boobies. It's got to be a real important movie. So you know, what more important can we get than to have a Holocaust movie with boobies?
And so very tasteful.
Yes. So in it, I mean, you know, it's like this pawnbroker, you know, it's this pawnbroker who just happens to be a Jewish gentleman. You know, he's trying to run his business. But he's getting hassled all the time by these Latino Catholic gangs, you know, that always have like a Mary statue or a crucifix in the background, and they're just always giving him a hard time, you know. And then there's this one girl that is, you know, trying to seduce him. This black lady, this black lady's trying to seduce him, which again was against the Hays Code.
German.
No. This is set in the United States. This is after the war. This isn't even during the Holocaust. It's just this pawnbroker. You know, he's living in the days after the horrors of World War II, and this black lady comes in and tries to seduce him, and she shows him her tits, and that triggers him, you know, because that triggers a thought back in his head to when he could see through a door and he could see what those nasty Germans were doing to his wife. And they ripped off her shirt and he saw her tits too. So he saw black tits and then he saw his Jewish wife's tits. Bang, 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 bang. And that was, you know, cut back and forth to show that he's having a real bad flashback because he hasn't seen tits since the war. And that broke the code. They're like, you know, in New York, they're like, we're going to allow him to show it anyway. Of course, because it's New York. And they're like, you know, and the rest, they're like, this is an important movie. We have to show this movie. And so all of a sudden across the country, they're like, well, we can't say no to this Holocaust movie with tits in it. So I guess we're just going to have to throw all of our values away and never, ever police them again. And that's how we got rid of the Hays Code. And here's the thing. You hate Westerns. And I almost brought in Westerns as like my do get because I fucking love Westerns. Love them. But I only love them from the Hays Code era. I really love them from the Hays Code era. After the Hays Code era and you can see it, man. You can just see the way they're just starting to pick away at it. And suddenly, all of a sudden, like you go from like the guy who's got virtues and who's like actually wants to like, you know, make the world a better place, but he's trying to, you know, maybe repent for his, you know, maybe gunslinging days past, or, you know, there's always some sort of a message in there that's going in there. That's all gone by the end of the Hays Code. And they went full swing the other way. Now it's all about the dirtiest bastard gunslingers. They're all like, you know, sleeping with some other guy's wife, and then, you know, that's where you see them guy like jumping out the window and like is like, you know, long johns and stuff, like all of that just like bam immediately was like this complete narrative shift. And almost all the movies are now like the misunderstood bad guy, you know, the misunderstood bad guy who has no morals whatsoever, but, you know, he has a reason to not have morals because the world's a mean and bad place. And you know, and then you get all these, like, you start to get these flips all the time. And like, one of the things that I love about the Western is, yes, there's gun violence. Yes, there's badassery. But in the old days, when they get shot, it's not like blood and gore everywhere. And then Sam Peckinpah comes onto the scene, and you get things like The Wild Bunch and you get the, the Dirty Dozen. You get all these like these movies that come through. The Dirty Dozen's not Western, but you get these like these slow motion blood squibs, and all of a sudden now the movie is like it's like half an hour longer because of all the slow mo shooting that happens, and the morals are all gone. It's all about like, let's get this one big heist and they get away with it. And I mean, I get it if that's something for somebody, but what I'm not saying bring it back hard, into it. Unfortunately, now we don't have a choice for any movies that do fall under that category. I mean, you guys were kind of teasing on like Christian movies or Christian shows on one of the other episodes recently, and it's sad because most of them do suck. Most of them are terrible. There are some good ones.
Do you know why? Do you know why I think they're terrible?
No, give me your reasoning.
They're terrible because they try and make a modern movie with this like old wholesome content as right. Opposed to like just making something that's supposed to be the one thing.
Well, and the thing is that like a lot of times they're written by like either preachers or people who have been listening to preachers, and preachers are used to like fitting a like, okay, because I'm Catholic, but like, I mean, for example, like Buck, I remember when I was talking to Buck about like what happens at one of your worship services on the weekend. Like, what do you guys even do? You don't consecrate a host. You don't, like ours has like a very set structure. Every single mass is like a very set structure until you get to what's called the homily. And that's where the priest gives his like sermon or, based on what the gospel reading was for that day. But like in Buck's case, like he was saying, like, the pastor will have something prepared and they'll do like a tithe speech before, and then they do their kind of their lesson. And then sometimes those lessons will go hours on end, he's saying. Sometimes they get in a groove and they go hours on end. Now,
ain't nobody got time for that. We got to get to lunch.
But like a homily I'm used to is like, mostly it was like 15 minutes. Yeah, they're about 15 minutes. Where we go, the guy does it, our priest does it in English, and then he does it in Spanish. So it's like he has to kind of cut it in half. I think he, it ends up being like 20 minutes because he does 10 and 10 or something, but it's no biggie. I like it. I can understand them both. But what I'm thinking is that you've got these preachers that are used to having like an unlimited amount of attention and time based on like reading the room, that they can kind of go into it without like a time limit. Whereas like a movie with like set scenes and dialogue and exposition and like, like 3 acts and all this kind of stuff like that. Like, I don't know if the people that are writing these things have the experience to make it work. Although, like, for example, like there are exceptions to the rule. Like there are some good movies that have that as a background. Sorry, my air conditioning just kicked on. There are some movies that like, so this is movie that we really love called For Greater Glory. And it's it's set in the late 1800s in Mexico, back when the communists were taking over in Mexico. And this is something like we don't know about as much because like it's not like we study Mexican history that much, but like they had a period of time where like the communists in Mexico legit shut down all the churches and started murdering priests. And that's kind of a big deal. And so this movie takes place during that period of time, and it's like the Cristeros, so like the Viva Cristo Rey people, and they were fighting back. And so it's like in this moral struggle of like, how much should we fight back, or do we resort to violence, or is that not okay, or like, and what is acceptable to fight for Christ or for not for Christ? It's a really good movie, and it's I think it's Anthony Garcia is the lead in it. It's just it's just like, it's one of those ones where you wouldn't know it was made outside of Hollywood, and I'm saying that in the right way, not in the, but like, it doesn't feel ham-fisted. It doesn't feel off kilter. we in our household, like one of the things that I really do like is like again, you're gonna bristle at this, but like family friendly done right. So like family friendly entertainment done right. So again, I can go back to this Hays Code era. I can pick out any of the comedies that are done from there, and we all laugh at them together as a family because they're funny. Like they're actually like well written. They actually had like really good screenwriters in a lot of these times. We watched this one. Comedy group that originally started out of BYU. Like it was through this thing called BYU TV, and it's called Studio C, and some of their skits are phenomenal, like so good. And they actually ended up going on. The original cast members went off away from BYU and did their own thing. So they do like JK Studios, and their whole thing is like, look, we just want to make it like actually funny and family friendly, and it's like really well done. And they have this show called Freelancers, which like makes us laugh our asses off. It's great. I don't know if they're still making. I think they made 2 seasons. I hope they do more. But like, it goes back to like what I was saying about the Hays Code thing. Is I love when people have creative constraints and thrive within them. Okay, so in the Hays Codes, like you can't like. For example, you couldn't have an on-screen kiss that lasted more than 3 seconds. So how did they get around that? They would kiss for 3 seconds and then turn away and then kiss again and do that. There would be ways to get around it, but they would work in some comedy or something would come up, and that was just their way of going about it. And like you said about the Marlon Brando shirt thing, like we laugh at some of these like Westerns, like it's again, you didn't want to have these movies that were too risque, but like, you know, or like a lot of the costumes of a Western, like the women wearing a dress, it's not exactly the most flattering, you know, dress, the prairie dress or something. So what they'll do is like the occasional time you'll be watching a movie and like what'll happen, like a horse will charge through or something where a woman will be walking in front of like a water trough and then she falls into the water trough. She comes back out and all of her dress is super clinging to her body. And you're like, oh, I see what you guys did. That's how you got past the code on this one. And for example, with stand-up comedy, right? I love good, clean stand-up comedy when it's done right. I used to like really like Bob Newhart stuff. Some of the times when like Norm Macdonald's been super clean. I know some people don't like Jim Gaffigan, like the person, but I appreciate like a guy who's built an entire career, filled arenas with like not swearing once.
Yeah.
And like, I know you have your feelings about Weird Al, but like, I respect the heck out of the guy for doing an entire career without getting super political and without cussing, without getting super,
not getting political on his albums.
Not on his albums, but you know what I'm saying? But what I'm seeing is I can play those with my kids. We can laugh because it's like neutral, funny, talented. Like there's one of my favorite comedians is Brian Regan. Have you ever heard of Brian Regan?
No, Brian Regan is one of my favorite comedians.
He's amazing. The guy never swears.
Yeah,
he never swears, and it's like the fact that I can put this on, like, it's hard to explain, but like, so my son, like Chaco Jr. is now 10, and 10 is such a fun, cool age to be around because like there's all types of questions and there's all types of he's discovering the world in certain ways. And so it's so great when I can put on Brian Regan, or I can sometimes put on even like Stephen Wright or somebody that like will have some really good comedy bits that I don't have to like explain too much because like I don't have to rush him through certain things to explain the concepts that are going on. And so that's what I really love about the concept of the Hays Code era is that it forced the creatives to work within bounds. And I think that it helped actually raise their product to a higher level. I don't know if that would happen today, but it really was cool. And it's not the same as like remember when like you'd see those movies, like R-rated movies when they get put on like TBS, you know, like when TBS would show a movie
Yeah,
And
like they turn Yippee Ki motherfucker into Yippee Ki Mr. Falcon when it's on TV.
exactly, or like the Big Lebowski, it was like
This is what
when
happens when you find a
when you
stranger in the
find a
Alps.
stranger in the Alps.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So like, I mean, we can chuckle about that, but like, I love the fact that there are people out there that can get that point across without swearing, without going into like complete risque mode, and you don't feel like they do it in such a way that you don't even feel like you're missing out on anything. It doesn't seem like for example, the movie A Christmas Story, right? So the one that again going back to TBS, something that plays over and over and over
Yeah.
again. But like in A Christmas Story, he does the bit where he ended up knocking the
Lug nuts out of the
lug nuts
hubcap.
out of his dad. Yeah, exactly. And he's like, "Oh fudge," and then like it, and he's like, "But I didn't say fudge." And like when I was a kid, like I didn't quite know until like it got explained to me. But it's done in such a tasteful manner that like it works. It works that I could watch that with my 10-year-old kid and be like, he'll be like,
I would encourage you not to, though, because it's not a good movie. It's
"Oh,
like
it's
4.5 hours long. It's about nothing.
I like it."
And now they're making a sequel for absolutely no reason.
Okay, we don't need to see that one. Nobody needs to, but it's in terms of Christmas comedies, I don't put it in the top 5. But
There is no top 5 of Christmas comedies.
I mean, yeah, there's probably a top 5.
No. All Christmas comedies are tied for last place of all movies ever.
You don't like Christmas Vacation?
Never seen it. Chevy
Okay.
Chase is a miserable human being.
Yeah, but he's a funny man.
No, he's not. No,
Yeah, he's a funny. He's been in.
He
funny
just has
movies.
a jackass face. The best thing he ever did is the music video for "Call Me Al." I hate Chevy Chase with every fiber of my being.
So you didn't like him on Community? You didn't like
Community got so much better when he left.
I disagree.
For like
I
that
thought Pierce
one
was hilarious.
season, and then
I don't know. Chevy Chase. I see. I think there's something about it here, though.
Something about his face is just punchable.
But see, the funny thing you say that is that there's something about his face that reminds me of one of my uncles who I appreciate. And I like this uncle, and he's from that same vintage. So like, it was funny because at that same time, I had uncles who reminded me of Chevy Chase, and I have uncles that reminded me of Bill Murray. Right. And I also had an uncle who reminded, well, not an uncle, but one of my dad's friends who reminded me of Dan Aykroyd. So like, I don't know, maybe it's just like a
generational thing.
It's a nostalgia thing or a generational thing. Like, yeah, but like, no, Chevy, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, though Chevy Chase is the lead, that's a Randy Quaid movie. Right, like that's
Randy Quaid's based. Randy Quaid saved us from aliens in 1996, so he deserves nothing but respect.
Well, and he also is he moved to Vancouver because he had like, what was it? Star whackers were coming after him. He grew his beard out.
I understand your point of view, and I support. Like, I like Brian Regan too, and I like him for the same reason. I liked him because I could put a Brian Regan album on. I could listen to it with my sister. I didn't have to worry about her asking uncomfortable questions about what he's talking about. We went and saw him live in concert, and we drove 2 hours to do it. It was great. It was, it's one of my favorite memories with my sister of all time. I'll always remember that. But I don't agree. I fundamentally disagree with someone telling me what kind of content I should be allowed, should be and should not be allowed. And so while Hollywood voluntarily said like, oh yeah, we're not going to allow people to curse and we're not going to show nudity. We were also not allowed to choose to see that thing on an individual level. And so if it's the will of the few dictating the content of the many, which is the same problem we have now, that we're kowtowing to this small group. I make a show that talks about how the Holocaust was terrible and we need to respect it. Make a show that is basically pornography. Make a show that is like completely wholesome and family friendly. But let me choose to watch one thing or another, and let everyone else choose to make those choices. When people offload their responsibility of parenting to an outside group, I think that is what damages society. That is why we are where we are,
No.
because people have just like, they've just been like, we need schools to do this thing. We need the government to handle this thing.
You're talking to a guy though. You're talking to a guy who literally moved his family away to get away from like the societal creep that is happening.
Yes,
that is happening over there, and
while,
who homeschools his kids. And
I'm completely abnormal. Like, I am the 1% of lunatics. I will say you're a far greater lunatic than I am. And I mean that with nothing but like love and respect.
But what I'm trying to say is
we're not normal people. That's why,
right.
like the discussion we had today about do boycott stick? Like, yes, you can keep your boycott and I can keep my boycott because we both have very, very strong wills. But we are the top 1% of people with will. Like, everyone around us, this is why we ended up where we did in the scamdemic, because while you and I are happy to make our own decisions and take the risk of not wearing a mask, everyone else needed, like 80% of people needed those decisions made for themselves.
But that's what I'm saying. Unfortunately, like, for that reason alone, you can't, because like, this is the thing, like, people offload these things. Okay, for example, one thing that I hate, like, I mean, capital H, hate,
Nakers,
is blasphemous, like casual blasphemy in shows. And when we're watching these shows, like, we used to really like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, right? And my wife and I went back to go and watch it. We're like, man, like, they drop GDs and they say our Lord's name in vain all the time. And the thing is that it's like, so there's this funny thing. Okay. So, like, going back to like limits or no limits. Okay. So if you're on the side of no limits, right? Like, no limits to content production.
Yes.
Okay. You have not one limit whatsoever on content production.
There's content that I don't want to consume, but I don't feel that I have the right to dictate that another person not consume it. Because child porn causes harm.
Yes. And I believe that, like, promoting divorce, promoting adultery, promoting all those things also causes harm.
But it's a less direct harm.
I don't believe that's true. I think that you're thoroughly, like, we saw the divorce rate skyrocket in the 70s. And like, but if you look at once the Hays Code era ended, that's when you got movies like Divorce Inc. And you got all these movies that are just constantly making it seem like it's no big deal at all. And there are people on this planet, lots of people on this planet, who are still struggling with the fact that their parents broke up. And it's tough. And it's really damaging to society as a whole. Now, I'm not saying physically damaging as in the CP.
Is the better benefit the parents staying married and hating one another? Because I think about my parents' relationship, and I cannot imagine growing up in that household.
But think about this. Think about it this way. For example, like, what? Okay, so our generation, even your generation, my generation, your generation. Okay, look at what was a lot of the coming of age movies. Okay, so for my generation, a lot of the coming of age movies were the lose your virginity movies, right? Yeah. So it was like you had American Pie, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. What is Fast Times at Ridgemont High telling you? It's telling kids, go have sex in school, and if you get pregnant, have an abortion, right? Like, and that was an extremely popular movie. Why? Because it's got a bunch of stars in it. It's got a great soundtrack.
And Phoebe Cates shows her breasts. And
Phoebe Cates shows her breasts. And the thing is that movie is like cemented in a lot of people's heads. And this weird thing that happens is, like, when I was going back to like saying the Lord's name in vain and stuff, there are swear words that somehow became less potent to say on television. So like on television, you certainly can't say shit, and you certainly can't say fuck, but you can say Jesus. You can do that with no problem at all, right? And it's like,
I think that's because we have now a cultural attack on Christianity.
But who from? And the thing is that the people, like, you don't have you.
Well, I think we all know who it's from. It's from some of those early life folks. They don't really care for the people splitting from the tribe. Let's put it that way.
Well, and this is the thing: is that it's okay to say his name in vain, but the second you say anything about Muhammad or something, like, you can't do that.
Are we still on YouTube?
Or are we still on Patreon? But the what my point is that
so like we don't disagree on whether or not the content's good. What we disagree on is the choice of the individual versus the choice of the collective. Right, and okay. I err more on the side of the individual because I want to personally experience the most freedom possible.
But you just said that everybody else is a fucking moron.
I did.
Everybody else is completely impressionable. So what I'm saying is that if all they're getting is fucking garbage, if all they're getting is complete mental garbage plugged in there, you give that 5 years, 10 years, and you get
garbage in, get garbage
right
out.
Now. Yeah. And we are living through garbage. Now, it's like,
but I don't trust. I also, at the same time, don't trust anyone to know what the right things to put into people's heads are, because that's the other side of it. Is that no matter if you put the Christians in control and to legislate morality and create the content that is moral, then we get Christian moral content. And if you agree with that, that's great. If you disagree with that, that's not good. So if you create a system where the system has this kind of power, like this is the fundamental thing that Republicans and Democrats don't get, is that we build a big government. When we get the power, we'll use it as a cudgel against them. So you like the Christian content, but then if we suddenly have a Muslim majority that wants to like put Sharia law into content, now we've created this system where you can create Muslim content. Now we have this system where you create woke content.
But I led with, this wasn't in law. It was self-policed by them because they wanted to make audiences happy. They dropped it when society was changing, but it's not, because the thing is that, okay, so going back to it, like, here's my compromise. Okay. So for example, the early life section people, when they go to the grocery store, can look for a little K on the package, right?
No, I know where you're going with this, and I agree completely. Like Rotten Tomatoes certified fresh. If there was a Hays code that was like certified moral, I'd be all for it.
We had that, and Hollywood,
but they wouldn't allow the non-content. So you went to the grocery store and everything had the K.
Right. But what I'm saying is that Hollywood made that decision itself. Okay. It wasn't that the Catholics said, Hollywood, we're never going to go to any of your movies. They said, make us some good movies. And from the business sense of the Hollywood producers at the time, like, look, if we just keep it all in these bounds here, then, because that's all it was a stamp. It was a stamp that said, this is MPAA approved, right? Like it was a Motion Picture Association approved movie. That's all it was. But and like going back to like, so for example, the Catholic Church got rid of its banned books list, right? Like, so they had a list of like banned books, not that like they were completely banned, like, you know, tear them out and throw them into a bonfire, but just like hey, Catholics, you want to stay Catholic? You want to, do you want to stay Catholic? Like you're not allowed in the club, but like, do you want to harm your sense of morality, or do you want to like, these are the books that might be a little bit dangerous for you to delve into, right? Which for somebody that might be a list of like, give me that book, right? Like I actually love buying banned books, not books banned by the Catholic Church, books banned by eBay, books banned by Amazon. Those are my favorite kind of books to get, because it's like, oh, you're banning that book. Then I want to see why you want it banned. I want to see what, give me that first edition that had that whole chapter taken out.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. I get what you're saying, and I am all for it. What I'm saying is like, at least give. I want an organization that goes, yes, you can, take this with your kids, take it with your family. The problem is like, so we have, besides Rotten Tomatoes, there's these like other groups online that you could look up movies, and there's ones that like are for parents to like look stuff up before you go and watch it with your kids, because you kind of want to know, like, you can't just figure it out in the theater.
No, IMDb has like the parent section. And I love that section because I'm like, is there going to be titties in this movie? Yes.
Exactly. Yes. But like,
sometimes they get weirdly specific too. They'll be like timestamps. And when I read those, because sometimes, so Tim and Truckin' and Tuckin' and I will get together for movie nights. And one of the fun things on some of these really bad movies is to go look and see how detailed the parent section is. Because it'll be like a slasher flick, right? And they'll be like, this movie has violence and gore. Like at one point, this woman's head gets chopped off. At one point, a guy gets like thrown into a big grinding machine. And you're like, that's funny. But then sometimes they'll be like weird ones. It'll be like 2 people share a kiss and it goes on for more than 7 seconds. And you're like, what?
Yeah, it's a little long. But okay, where I'm going with this is, yes, you should be allowed to watch your movies so long as it's not child porn or a snuff film of somebody dying or something on purpose, like being killed, right? Like, I mean, like, we can find a common ground on that end. What's getting harder for us, so for example, like going back to like, there's a website called commonsensemedia.com. And I used to go to that. It was great for like, okay, I'm going to get a game for my kid, or if I'm going to watch a movie with my kids. There's ones like, I have to go back and watch movies that we watched when we were kids to make sure that they were all fucked up. Cause like there's 80s movies that I was like, oh yeah, that movie's great. We were watching, we're like, what the hell were we watching when we were kids? Like, these were really messed up movies.
My parents let me watch Terminator 1 and 2, Commando, Predator, like all these horrifically violent movies. Yes. But when I have children, I will encourage them to watch those films as well. Because I came out like a pretty well-adjusted person. I mean, other than the screaming every week into the internet thing. But I agree with you. I wish I wish that people just made the content that they want to make instead of trying to like hit the guidelines of past or present Hollywood. And I think there should be groups that say like, we support this movie because it fulfills X, Y, and Z thing. And we support this movie because it fills W, X, and G thing. And then you find those kinds of people. That's why but when
the budgets will get worse.
When the budgets are too big. The budgets are too damn big. Every movie has to make $1 billion. So it has to be the most homogenized, boring, nonsensical thing.
But it's not homogenized. Dude, I haven't gone to the movie theater in a long time. The last movie I went in the theater, I went to go and see Sonic the Hedgehog with my kids.
It's a great movie.
Why did I go to Sonic the Hedgehog? Because I read up and I was like, none of the garbage is in it. There's no garbage in it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's why Tim and I loved it, because it was just a movie about a hedgehog that saves the world. That was it. They didn't put a bunch of there was no politics, there was no religion, there was no anything. It was just
never religion in these movies, though.
It was just a simple movie about a hedgehog that saved the world. And I was like, why can't they just make movies that are just about a thing? They have to have all this political bullshit in them for no reason.
Dude, half the audience is like insulted all the time on purpose, because like, and if you go back and you're looking since the Hays Code era, it's been there the whole time. This underlying message: divorce, feminism, white man bad, like capitalism always bad, Christianity always bad. Like, think of all the movies you've seen where the most hypocritical, crappy, like just like like closeted, like just horrible person, is always like the front facing like Christian person. Whereas like most of the Christian people I know, not just in the Catholic Church, but most of the Christian people I know are pretty solid people. They aren't a bunch of like closet monster assholes. Yes, there are some, but we're talking about like what is the norm? If for example, like down here, and I mean across all of Latin America, uh telenovelas are a big deal, right? Like telenovelas. But like again, once telenovelas came into the picture, divorce rates skyrocketed. Why? Because almost all the shows are about adultery and divorce and breaking up and fighting and all this kind of stuff. If you're just getting constantly pumped in with that garbage all the time, it does have an effect. It does have an effect. It will, like this, the divorce rate here in Paraguay is enormous. I hardly know anybody in my age group here whose parents are still together. And this is a Catholic country, and they're just divorce rate through the roof. And so I don't know what the solution completely is, but at the same time, I would definitely love to have a real group that would say, okay, like, yeah, I guess we can use this IMDb more. Most parents aren't. Most parents don't give a crap. Most parents are letting their kids use their phones. And what is the average age of a kid now having this first exposure to pornography? It's like 10. It's like 9 or 10. That dude, we can't survive like this. It's not good. It's really bad. And I think down the road it's going to get worse before it gets better. But like,
yeah, well, the good news is World War III is coming.
It certainly is.
It's supposed to wipe out half the population, and I think that is really what we need to like have that return to Jesus moment where we like stop acting like a bunch of dipshits and start to prioritize, fixing the problems instead of, because the problem my problem with everything is that we keep handing off responsibility.
I'm not doing that.
As a society, we're just like, someone else will handle it. Someone else will handle it. And no one's like stepping in to fix anything.
Right. Well, and that all I'm saying is like, okay, going back to like Common Sense Media, right? So like I go on there now, and the problem is like even the definition of family friendly is being like totally wonked up.
Yeah, because
right?
we've always been at war with Eurasia, Joel. Welcome to it.
Dude, there's these Disney comedy westerns called The Apple Dumpling Gang, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Apple Dumpling Gang I really liked when I was a kid. And I go to Common Sense Media and I look it up, and it's like there's a female character in it who ends up adopting these kids. But like,
wait, are these midgets?
No, they're not. They're not midgets in this movie. No, but like the Apple Dumpling Gang is like orphan kids who are getting looked after, and like there in the side there's like the two comedic villain characters who are crappy crooks, bad at what they do. But like in it, like the main like it's based. Did you ever watch the show Webster when you were a kid? Like, do you ever remember the show Webster?
Before my time.
Everything is going to be before your time. When I refer, the mom from Webster, she was in this movie, and she's like kind of like a tomboy, right? She's like a tomboy in it. She's like good with like working with horses, and she's like like good at fixing things and doing all this kind of stuff. But like when the kids come and she has to take care of the kids, like she actually really likes it, and then like actually becomes more like motherly, and then like actually like by the end of the film, she like goes like kind of stops wearing like manly tomboy stuff and actually started looking feminine and stuff. This is roasted so bad in Common Sense Media. Like, this is a bad message for girls because it's saying that like in order to be happy she needs to be a mom. It's like, what's wrong with being happy with being a mom? Like that is not a bad thing. And so the thing is like the weird thing is like these kind of movies, these kind of things are so rare now. They're never around. There's none of them out there. Like what was it? There was a movie that came out this a couple years ago, or maybe like last year. It was like the Mitchells versus the Machines, right? Right. And so I like looked it up, And again, like it's like, okay, got good ratings, and I was like, okay, should I watch this with the kids? And I like bought the DVD, and like I was ready to like put it on and stuff. Like I was reading it, and it's like, oh yeah, and then the girl ends up being like in a lesbian relationship that everybody's like happy with at the end. And I was like, I guess like I guess like I guess we could put this on, but like it's like, but like she's always fighting with her dad, and her dad never understands her, and all this kind of stuff. Like, we'll just take a pass on this one. I don't need it because like the whole dumb dad sucks. That like is almost tired now. But it's not tired enough for Hollywood.
It'll never
it's
be
not tired enough for Hollywood.
Are we shitting on men? We'll keep doing it.
But so this is the thing, right? Like, I'm not saying I love the Hays Code. What I'm saying is I love movies made during the Hays Code era. They were my favorite. It's like I can look at the time period. I can go, oh, 1957, throw it on. It's going to be awesome. So anyways, that's my do get. Hays Code movies.
Well, that's a good do get. And that brings us to the middle of our episode, which means it's time for... Damn it. Highlighted the wrong thing.
This episode is brought to you in part by the Ricada News Network. Definitely not fake news.
Well, Joel, you actually sent me a couple of news stories today. Have you drive a lot, right? Well, you don't drive a lot. You drive once a week.
I drive once a week, yeah.
But we all know, like, the worst part of driving is bicyclers.
Oh, I'll give you this one, yes.
And then the second worst. So you're driving along, you're stuck behind a bicycler. You're like, oh, can this day get any worse? And then you get to the next intersection, and you're stopped for 45 minutes while a funeral procession goes by. And if that wasn't infuriating enough, so this lady in Paris has something like for you. Undertaker Isabelle Plumera is cycling around Paris with a hearse on the front of her bike, and there's a picture of this thing. She's got this bicycle that has a casket attached to the front so that they can have more environmentally friendly funerals.
Because that's what we were worried about. Is like we got one less person on the planet. Let's just be even more environmentally friendly.
Yeah, she's rolling around. If you're watching it on YouTube, she's rolling around with this hearse in the front of it. It's like, oh yeah, all of these funeral processions take so much. It's more green. They have them in all these other things. She says, for me, it makes sense to combine the bicycle and the hearse, because when we talk about bicycles in Paris, we were talking about soft mobility. And if there's one a day where we need softness, it's a day when we accompany someone to their final resting place. Now, I haven't been to a lot of funerals, but I've been to enough funerals. And what I'm thinking is, if I'm riding to a funeral, you're normally like in a suit, you got a tie. Now you have to get your ass on the back of a bicycle, and you're pedaling along behind the damn hearse to get to the fucking graveyard to drop this bastard into the hole. Like, and then you get there and you're just soaked underneath that thing. This sounds awful. No part of this sounds good. The only thing
that picture too.
Can
you put the picture back up on the screen?
The only thing that this once makes me want to do is like, okay, we're gonna have the service at the graveside so that we don't have to ride the bike anywhere.
So is she just gonna like go then around the cemetery, just like and look at how smug her face is. Like,
she's so proud of herself.
Look at how proud of herself she is. Like, look at the amount of engineering that went into this thing too, and like just like it's so far in front of her. Like, I would have understood maybe if it was like behind her, like if she was driving. But yeah, look at how smug this lady is. And she's driving. She's pedaling with heels on and like a trench coat. Like it's like, what is the point of this? And yeah, as soon as I saw this, man, like.
Have you ever been to, like, I don't know if they have this in Canada and Paraguay, but like every so often I'll go to a concert or event, it'll be outdoors, right? And so you'll park a couple blocks away where the parking's good or cheaper, and then you're walking in and there'll be like that guy and he has the rickshaw bicycle and he's like, hey, hop in, it's $5, we'll take you right to the front door. And the bike is like so geared so that his feet move at a normal pace, and then you travel at like 2 miles an hour and you're like, we could have just walked. Why didn't we just walk? We're losing beer money to make this jackass ride us to where we need to go. Oh, this is so embarrassing.
They had that in Vancouver. That was definitely a Vancouver thing. But it was only in like a small little circle around the bars, like because like it gets hilly in some parts, and you don't want to be riding on the front of these things when you're going downhill or something like that. And he certainly doesn't want to go uphill. So yeah, I hate those three shot things. They're the worst. But man, this like again going back to this, like this lady and this idea, like no way this is gonna fly. Like no, and like what kind of asshole is like, yeah, we're gonna pay the respects to grandpa by like just like
Yeah. Also,
the most obnoxious the most obnoxious funeral procession of all time.
so you put this in your will, right? It's like, my funeral must be conducted by bicycler. This is Lance Armstrong's final will, and the family's just like, yeah, we're not fucking doing that.
I don't know if you saw there was this viral like this. I don't know if he was a millionaire or billionaire guy who had like a he was white and his daughter was half black, and like for her the wake she just shit all over her dad and all over white men, and she's like, you said that I should do this with my money, I'm not doing any of it, dad, and like you're you know all this, and it went viral. And I just think like what's worse, like what's worse, like having your daughter just shit all over your legacy verbally or visually by being peddled by that smug bitch in France.
The only thing that would make this more efficient is if like she rides all the way up to the grave and then does a stoppie and your casket just slides out the front and right into the hole. Right in there. See you later, Uncle Joe. We're out of here.
Oh man.
I've got another news story here from Dad Cucks coming to us from Reddit. Friends of Reddit user Incredibly Shiny Shart were in for a stomach-turning surprise when he invited them around for a Sunday brunch. His guests arrived for a feast of pastries, cakes, mimosas, and tacos, but there was a catch. The tacos were made with the meat from his very own foot.
Oh.
The 38-year-old Reddit user was driving 45 miles an hour when he was hit and flung from his bike, another bicycler problem. The bones on his foot, I guess he was probably on a motorcycle. The bones from his foot were shattered, and he would never be able to walk again. So they had it amputated, and he asked to know if he could keep the foot when he was done. So after the operation, he took it home and froze it, and then eventually he invited 11 friends over. They cooked his foot, and he put it into the tacos. That's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard.
Did you? Okay. What's your take on Bob's Burgers? Do you like Bob's Burgers?
Never seen it.
It's good. It's actually mostly wholesome. Mostly.
Would it pass the Hays Code?
No. No. But the original pilot, Lauren Bouchard, who was behind the show, had it be where like they were going to make it so that like the deep dark secret was they were serving human meat,
like Sweeney
and
Todd.
they were like, maybe this is not a good idea. And like, it's like that doesn't have the staying power, and it's a better show. It's a better show because they didn't do that. Yeah, man, gross.
I've got one last news story here. This one's also from you, and I'm going to start with kind of a personal story. One of the things, so as a kid, I was really into space. I really wanted to like. I read a lot about the whole space program from the original Mercury 7 through the early shuttle missions. Was fascinated with us landing on the moon. Wanted to go to Kennedy Space Center and see the Saturn V. And the thing that I like reading these books in the 90s, right, in the very early 2000s, is I love the retro futurism of the 50s and 60s, where they're like, yeah, in the year 2000, we're going to be living on the moon. We'll have flying cars. Everything's being run by fusion. And like, I will have all these space stations. You'll take planes into space and then dock in the International Space Station, then land in Alaska. It'll take 11 minutes. It'll be fantastic. And I was like, this is going to be the future. And now here I am in 2022 in the future, and it is just fuck all. It's exactly the same bullshit that we had when I was in the 3rd grade, although now we have the internet so that all your shit's broadcast to the entire planet. So NASA's made another bold prediction saying humans will be living on the moon. Could be living on the moon before the end of the decade. and a leading official NASA said, "Can you imagine John F. Kennedy like, we go to the moon, we do the other things, like we should make it a goal of this nation that before the decade is out, that maybe we could maybe like land on the moon, or if there's like not too much other shit going on, or we could dump $4 billion into fucking Africa and all kinds of aid program in the goddamn ghettos." Sorry, Joel. That's why we're not living on the moon, by the way, because we just dump money into fucking worthless people.
See, I'm just picturing I'm picturing the HOA. That would be, because it's going to be like a condo community, and they'll be like, there'll be little complaints, like, Tab, that we've had the other residents in the building are they're a little bit upset about how you're screaming all the time when you're doing your podcast from the moon, and your moon buggy is not environmentally friendly. We are now switching to moon bikes, and so we're gonna need to because like no matter what, it's gonna suck living up there, because the only people that can actually live up there, if they ever pull it off, which they won't, because we've never been to the moon.
We've absolutely been to the moon. It would take way more resources to cover up the fake moon landing than it would to just go to the moon.
I mean, just like erasing telemetry tapes. Anyways, the point is that they will make it suck. It'll have you and I won't be able to go there because like white privilege. We won't.
Oh,
I'm
going. I'm volunteering. Like first crew, they're like, yeah, we want some random volunteers. Send them to the moon. Send them to Mars. I'm like, I'm up for it. Get me off this planet with all these fucking idiots. If I die on the moon, that's fucking historic. The first rage and science-based podcast hosted from the moon. Welcome to it. The first gigantic asshole to die on the moon. I'll take it. All you people lived and died on the same piece of shit rock in space. I'm on a new one. Goodbye. Anyway, yeah. So they're with the successful launch of the Artemis rocket from the Kennedy Space Center on Wednesday. It's carrying the Orion lunar spacecraft, which has a mannequin in it. The launch manager said that we're going to be taking long-term deep space exploration. It's a historic day. Blah, 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 blah. It's the whole SLS. It's now the Artemis system, but it was the SLS for a long time, and it's finally off the ground. It's just so, I'm so tired of it that we won't put the real resources into going to the moon, because we have to spend a bunch of money to give poor people more money for them to throw away on big screen TVs. And so we're just going to die on this rock, and the sun's going to explode, and that's where we're going to be.
It's not like we haven't spent a lot of money on NASA. I mean, NASA
is one of the lowest budget things in. But the reason why we
and they've gotten us where and done what, I don't know.
With Velcro closures on your pants.
Oh, we never would have gotten Velcro. I got Velcro burrs in my.
This pen will write in space. There were so many technological advancements from the moon shot, and we just gave it up because we have poor people here on Earth we should be taken care of. Let's dump more money into the ghettos.
They're still dumping billions into it, dude. They're still dumping billions.
They're not dumping,
and all we're getting is like videos.
We got to send more money to Israel because they're our greatest ally. $40 billion for the Ukraine, but God forbid we spend a little bit of money to put people on another rock in space. Well, just think about it. Think about all the we have all these resources, like finite resources. We need renewable power. We need all this stupid bullshit. Just think about the ability that you have to clean water in a closed system in a space station, and then apply that to a shitty nation in Africa. We fixed a lot of problems.
But this is the thing. NASA does stupid waste of money shit all the time. Like, for example, when all of a sudden it's like, hey, the Super Bowl's coming up, and they're all like wearing like the two teams that were from the Super Bowl that were in the Super Bowl. But it's like, but you guys launched you guys got up there like before the NFL playoffs even started. So how did you get did you bring every single fucking team's jerseys onto the flight? I've seen the calculations about how much it costs to send like 1 pound into space. So wait, you're saying that you guys thought it was a good idea to send all the NFC teams and all the AFC team jerseys up with you just for this one fucking photo op? That's just bad budgeting, is what I'm thinking.
Not to mention that Chris Carter, not Chris, whatever the mustache
Canadian
astronaut
Chris
with the
Hadfield?
fucking
Oh, I
guitar.
fucking hate that guy.
Fucking,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I played a guitar up in space. Like, no one gives a shit, dude.
I know. No, dude.
Why don't you get back to doing some fucking science experiments?
Space Station to me is the cringiest fucking thing. I can't stand it.
I love space. We should be going to space. I'll volunteer. We'll be the first interplanetary podcast to tackle all of the universe's toughest issues.
If anybody is going to have an interplanetary interstellar podcast, yes, this would definitely be the one.
We've done interstate, we've done international, we're now intercontinental.
Mm-hmm.
There's only nowhere to go but up.
Perfect. Do I have time to run in one quick fish news?
Yes.
All right. This comes from the jolly old UK. Nation divided on correct fish finger portion, but Bird's Eye sets the record straight. A mom sparked an online debate about how many fish fingers made a portion for an adult, and the nation couldn't agree. But Bird's Eye have set the record straight. So fish fingers. So fish fingers are a mealtime favorite for many Brits. They're cheap, they're cheerful, and they count towards one of the portions of fish you should be eating per week. Okay, we're already starting with like limiting on how many fish portions you should be having per week.
I'm trying to think of the last time I ate fish. I couldn't tell you.
Really?
Yeah. I don't care for fish.
Fair enough.
Yeah, actually, I have no idea.
Jim Gaffigan has a bit about that. But
was it Friday? Was it
no
3 days ago? Was that the last time you ate fish?
Yeah, you did every Friday. I'm a fish farmer, dude.
Yeah.
But what makes a portion of fish fingers for adults? It seems the nation is torn. A woman took to Mumsnet to ask what a good portion for adults is, stating that she thought 4 was enough. Pondering over the question, she said, "This is causing World War III in my house currently." Answers range from 2 to 10 fish fingers per mealtime, but Bird's Eye has set the. I don't even know who fucking Bird's Eye is, by the way. I
assume they're like Swanson chicken, Bird's Eye fish. One of just a
Bird's Eye has set. Yeah, it's probably what's written on the back of the box.
Exactly.
But Bird's Eye has set the record straight, so we need to wonder no more. Oh, thank goodness.
I was worried. I've had all this like stress in my life going on. And so much of it has been tied to how many fish fingers are the correct portion.
Exactly. So the mom also specified that the fish fingers were being served with chips and beans. Okay, so see, now you're complicating things.
Beans?
Yes.
Oh! Why would you put beans in with this?
You don't even want to see this picture.
Oh, God.
One fish finger fan commented, "I would have said 2 was enough. But not everybody agreed, with some mocking the Mumsnetter for suggesting such a small portion. Another responded by saying they'd laugh if they were given 2 fish fingers. Someone else said 6 to 8 in our house, teenagers and adults, with peas and baked beans and sometimes mash, or 4 in a sandwich with cucumber and brown sauce." I don't even know what brown sauce is.
It is exactly what it says.
Okay.
Sauce that's brown. It's British. They don't exactly make food.
It's just brown. We're all a healthy weight, but 3 or 4 wouldn't touch the sides. Bird's Eye have waded in to officially settle the debate. However, sharing what recommended adult portion size is, they said, and I quote, "The recommended adult size portion." Well, I should do it in a British accent. If I do actually, you're going to know how bad my British accent is. The recommended adult size portion for standard fish fingers is 4 fingers. For those wanting to opt for something a bit more hearty, Bird's Eye recommends 2 chunky fish fingers for an adult size portion. Remember, it's recommended that a healthy, balanced diet should include at least 2 portions of fish a week, including 1 of oily fish. They also stress that children's nutritional needs differ from those of adults, so smaller portion sizes might be appropriate. So, hey, by the way, you're missing out on some sweet omega-3s, fatty acids and stuff like that. They're saying you should at least have one oily fish. You could probably, manage to get a sardine or two in there, couldn't you?
That would cut into my steak. I need at least 11 portions of steak a week.
Man, you'd fit in so well down here in Paraguay, man, with all the asados. So
love steak.
That's the story. That's fish news for this month.
That has been fish news, and this has been
the Ricada News Network. Definitely not fake news.
And that takes care of our legal obligations this week. But it doesn't take care of
the paying the bills.
Paying the bills. And if you want to help us pay the bills, I'm trying to write this word and talk at the same time, which is not a good idea. You can visit us at patreon.com/HWIDG or now subscribestar.com/HWIDG. We launched that today. Both are a great way to support the show. Over on Patreon, we have 5 tiers. On Subscribe Star, we only have 3. Because if you're switching, you're going to pay more, you son of a bitch. On Patreon, we have the $1 tier, which gets you early access to each week's episode, plus our monthly minisodes. We have a $2 tier, we throw the random bits and bobs we do. Tim and I have been doing some movie commentaries, or not movie commentaries, movie reviews before and after. On Patreon and Subscribe Star, we have the $5 tier where you get your monthly bonus episodes. Here's what I do get. We drop the hate and talk about what's great. That's right. It sounds exactly like this episode right now. And you'll get all of the $1 and $2 tier content on Subscribe Star. Then we have the $10 tier where you, the fan, submit a film. We sit down and watch and record a feature in the commentary. I'm going to be sending out a submission form in just a couple of days for all our $10 tier subscribers. And in the month of December, from December 21st until January 1st, I'll be watching at least one movie a day live in the Discord and recording a feature in the commentary with you, the fans, or a co-host of the show. And we will watch every movie that is submitted to make up for the year of missing movie commentaries. And then finally, we have our $50 Spite Producer tier where you get a say in the show. You can ask for a special bonus episode. You can ask for special episode format. We've got special.
You could ask for Hays Code type rules on episodes where we drop the nudity and we drop the profanity.
Let's be honest, that would never work. I mean, you're talking about me. Right now we're in a Spite Producer requested theme for the month. So we want to say thank you to all our patrons, big and small, for helping make the show possible. If it weren't for you, we would just not be doing this. The show would have been canceled at episode 300. You know what pisses me off is why can't I put spaces between these URLs at the bottom of the fucking screen? When I put the space in there, it's like, nah, this needs to be jammed right the fuck together. Sons of bitches.
It's like Reddit formatting.
Fucking bullshit. Anyway, well, let's get back into some do-gets, Joel. And here's what I do get. People are probably like, what is Tab going to be bringing in right now on account of the fact that he's been bringing in the same bullshit for the entire this entire November. So, but fear not. Here it comes. Here's what I do get. Star Trek, the original series. I'm actually looking at a picture of the NCC 1701 Enterprise from the original series on my other screen right now. It's just like it's in the rotation of all my backgrounds. I love Star Trek, the original series. And speaking of the Hays Code, it came out deep in the Hays Code era. It was 1966 and 1969. So just as the Hays Code wound down in 1968. A big violator of the Hays Code, Star Trek, the original series, features the first interracial kiss on television. Of course, that was allowed because they were under mind control from some, I think they were like ancient Greek gods. I love Star Trek, the original series. People have shit all over it in the last few years, and it really deeply upsets me because the people that shit on Star Trek, the original series, are absolutely not Star Trek fans. Is it silly by modern standards? Yes. Is it simplistic by modern standards? Also, yes. Mm-hmm. Are the production values trash by modern standards? Yes. But if you watch a series from 1966 and you hold it to modern visual media standards, you're a moron. At the time, it was so unbelievably cutting edge compared to the other, like the stuff on TV at the time. Westerns, Joel, you love them. Westerns, you go out in the desert, you put on a cowboy hat, you shoot your guns, you ride your horse, no problem. Star Trek, it's like, we got to land on an alien planet. People have to wear alien clothes. They have to have alien technology. They have to be in a spaceship that looks interesting. Yeah, the sets are like very colorful and unique. Technicolor was brand new. They were like, we need this show to sell color TVs to people's houses. What colors do TVs replicate? Green, blue, and red. What are the colors of the uniforms? Green, blue, and red. And you're like, whoa, Tab, the uniforms aren't green. They're gold. That's because the TV lights don't work right. The gold uniforms were the velour was green to the eye.
Really?
Yeah. And then when you put it under studio lights and the camera eye, they turned gold, and it was like, well, what are we going to do with this? That's why Captain's Kirk variant uniform and his dress uniform are green, because they were a similar color under visual light when you compare them. But then when you put them on screen, it's like, whoa, this is totally different. What the hell is going on here?
Is this kind of like that, like picture of that dress that some people saw as one color?
It is. It's a similar process. Like I see this all the time in theater, right? Like the costume designer picks out these, nice threads and like, oh yeah, this guy's gonna wear an all black suit, black tie, black shirt, black jacket, black pants, black shoes, right? And then the guy walks out on stage during the first dress rehearsal, and those theater lights hit him with the colored gel, and maybe it's slightly blue or slightly red or whatever. And all of a sudden, it's very obvious that the jacket and the pants are not from the same batch, and the shirt looks kind of weird. And so you look at those, and it's just because like blacks are especially problematic on stage because it depends on what colors they use to get it to black, what light it reflects. So you like use these different colors in the pants and the shirt, and suddenly the guy looks goofy because it's bouncing. The pants are bouncing the blue light more, and the jacket's bouncing the red light more, and he looks like a clown.
It's funny you mentioned that because we had a similar thing when we would do wrestler intros, or sorry, wrestler entrances, because we had to have each wrestler that came out had a different color scheme, different music, and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny because like in post, our producer, I'm the producer, the director and the editor, he was the one who had to go and do a bunch of fixing. We had this one character whose outfit was black and yellow, but like when we put on the lights on him, it looked this kind of pukey color when he came out, and it didn't work well. So we ended up just actually working with that, and then changing it so that when he came out, we actually would cycle through all the different colors of our lights. And it was like, because he was like this crazy circus character kind of guy. And so we ended up just we leaned heavily into it because we're like, none of the colors look right. Let's just fucking throw everything we got at them. And it actually worked. But I did not know that. That's today I learned about this Star Trek, the original series uniforms. I did not know that.
Yeah, they were supposed to be red, blue, and green to sell Technicolor. There's a reason to go buy a color TV.
Because like,
and now we have
Batman
4K
series. The Adam West Batman series was also like heavily Technicolor thrown in your face kind of thing.
Yeah,
but at the same time,
series were at the exact same time, 1966.
But so it's funny because you were mentioning about like the production value and stuff. Well, like the last time we spoke, we were reviewing that Godzilla Mothra movie.
Yeah. And
I'll be honest with you, man, like, there are sequences from the original series of Star Trek that make that Godzilla movie look horrible. I mean, in terms of, even though it's like a bit cornball, like it's still like, a little more believable than some of the stuff that that was done in that Godzilla movie.
Godzilla movies from the 90s. Yeah. And you talked about the Hays Code, like they had to be more creative because the limitations are on them, and I agree with that completely. I when I see like the modern film is trash because they can just whatever stupid thing comes to the guy's mind, they're just like, yeah, we can just CGI the shit out of that and look great, and then it looks awful. Yeah. When you look at like George Lucas's original Star Wars screenplay, that would have been a terrible movie. but they were like, yeah, you have way little budget. So he's like, well, I'll just kind of like pare down. And then what really saved that movie was editing. He had a really good editor that cut out all the fat, and they like all that stuff is practical. And so the show really worked. That movie really worked. And Star Trek was the same way. You couldn't like go out on the sci-fi stuff of they're like flying out through space, shooting lasers at one another, just like endless explosions. And Star Trek, the original series, had they were telling morality plays. That's really what the show came down to. It was like, here's good, here's bad
to it.
Yeah. But it wasn't, they weren't like aside, people remember episodes like the Omega Glory, where it's the Yangs versus the Combs, the Yankees versus the communists, and they literally the climax of that episode is literally Kirk reciting the what is it? It's the preamble of the Constitution to this tribe, and in the most exaggerated Shatner way that anyone possibly could. And yeah, there are episodes like that are kind of like lame. Like there's no way to describe it other than lame. But then you have episodes like I want to say the Turnabout Intruder, but that's the final episode. There's an episode in the first or second season where they first come upon the Romulans that I'm blanking on the name. There's Balance of Terror, and it's a submarine combat. It's literally like they literally just stole a submarine movie that I don't know the name of, and they set it in space, and it's like all the same plot points. It's almost exactly the same movie. But the reason why that movie worked and the reason why that episode worked was because like there's tension, there's building, there's the turnabout of back and forth of the two like captains fighting. It's a great episode. It's so captivating. Like you could take that and make it today and change it to different kinds of spaceships, and it would still be good because the script is good. The Star Trek, the original series, had this great habit of they hired the great sci-fi writers of the time, and they're like, hey, write a sci-fi TV show. Here are the parameters. We have to work in our characters. And so they had these great sci-fi stories like City on the Edge of Forever, where McCoy inadvertently stumbles back in time and saves a woman's life. And by saving that woman's life, it completely derails the entire space program and makes the Enterprise not exist. So then Kirk has to go back in time to undo what he did. He falls in love with the woman, and he has to watch her die on the street so that history can play out the way it's supposed to. That's some really tough shit.
That's deep. That's deep. See, it's funny. Like when did you get? At what age and how did you get your Star Trek original series to you? Because like from when I was growing up, it wasn't in reruns. It wasn't where I was. Like I would have to go out after and watch it all on DVD or watch it all online or something like that. It wasn't available to me. I got TNG. I got the Star Trek animated series, which I hated as a kid. I hated it. It creeped me out. Actually, when Star Trek did come on later on, like when it was later, the original series was on for a little bit before. There was something about, there was like a face of an alien or a face of a monster that was in the final credits or something. It used to scare the shit out of me as a kid. So I just didn't even bother with the show. But how did you get what was your, did your dad show it to you? Was it on like after school or
no? Okay. So I was into Star Trek. I've talked about it before in the Mad Cooks versus Discovery things. Like the only thing my parents agree on is that they both like Star Trek. That's it. That's if I really like delved into what that's it. That's the only thing I can think of that they have in common. And so no matter where I was, if Star Trek was on, we got to watch it. Like that was if it was Friday night, if I was at my dad's, we'd be watching Star Trek. If I was at my mom's, we'd be watching Star Trek because everybody liked it. And so, but we watched TNG. That was what was on when I was first born, and I watched all the movies and I loved them. And my dad, I was staying the weekend with my dad, and he said like, "Oh, I want to show you the Star Trek movie." And it was Star Trek, the original series, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And I remember distinctly telling my father, I said like, that original series stuff, that's fine for you, but I'm more of a TNG guy, like that stuff's the past, old man. And we watched Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and I loved it. And then I think we watched the rest of the original series films that same weekend. Just binged them. And so then we started, like, I remember we bought a DVD of Assignment Earth, and I started reading some of the books, and I got into them, and like we would catch the episodes on, like, it wasn't Spike, I think it was G4 at the time. They had like Star Trek 2.0, and when the episodes were brand new, you could like chat online, and your stuff would show up on cable television. I think there was a little bit of a filter. You couldn't be like, "Fuck, I would fuck the shit out of you, Janice Rand. God, she's got a fat ass." Like, that stuff wouldn't get through. But it was like some of that stuff would come through, and so we'd watch those. And then the DVDs started coming, and we'd buy DVDs or rent DVDs, and then the whole series came out on DVD at some point, and he would watch them and I would watch them. And so, yeah, it was just that, like, it's the relationship I have with my father that gave me a love of the series, that gave me like the start of the love with the series. But it's not one of those things where it's something that I watched as a kid. Like, I can, some of these episodes, not all of them, some of these episodes, I watch them as an adult, and I come away with such a different understanding of the challenges involved. Like Sitting on the Edge of Forever, as a kid, it was just an episode, but as an adult, when you've fallen in love and you've lost those kinds of things, you can really empathize with Kirk in a way that you can't as a kid. And then there are the fun episodes, like Space Seed, where this genetically engineered Superman from the year 1996 is discovered in space, and he tries to take over the Enterprise. And like, there's not a lot of depth there. It's just kind of an action show. But I think that's the strength of Star Trek as a franchise. You can do these really, like, intensely personal dramas, and then you can do like the fun action adventure, swashbuckling, Horatio Hornblower in space, and it can be part of the same story. It doesn't have to all be that. So many shows these days, it's all just this slog of emotions and depth and crying and bullshit, or it's so completely empty of any meaning that it's just popcorn fluff. And Star Trek, the original series, was able to play both things, and that's why it became iconic. There are no other series from the 60s that got canceled because there's not a Land of the Lost. There's not 50 years of Land of the Lost content. There's not 50 years of there's a TV show my dad watched that from the similar era, where they like Land of the Giants. They land on a planet where everyone's giant, and they have all these sets where it's like thimbles that are gigantic, and they're wandering around. Like, that show got canceled, and it's just been forgotten about. Emergency has been forgotten about. Like, there's so many series that come and go, and for whatever reason, because I think it spoke to so many people, it's continued on for 50 years. Like, the franchises that are that old, James Bond, Doctor Who, Star Trek, there's not a lot of them. And so
mega franchises.
Yeah. When people shit on these, like the core, the original thing, when they shit on the original Doctor Who, and they go back and retcon the beginnings, it's just like, you don't deserve to be a part of this franchise, because the people that are watching this, the people like my dad that watched it in reruns and fell in love with it and continue to love Star Trek until the movies came out, until the later TV shows came out that had introduced it to their children, who have introduced it to other people. Like, that's who these series belong to. Not CBS. Go ahead.
Well, that's the thing, is that for like, I've never been a big, huge Star Trek guy, not a dislike Star Trek guy. So I'm gonna couch that. I'm never gonna say like, I'm more of a Star Wars guy, or I'm not. That's not my thing. I'm a wrestling guy, and a lot of that has to also do with when I was growing up and going to wrestling shows with my dad, and like seeing these characters play out. And people shit on wrestling all the time, and they have reason to. but at the same time, there's morality plays. There's all types of good versus evil that goes into it, and it's a simple thing that gets played out. Like you watch it back as an adult, and you go, "Holy crap! They were playing this out for months at a time," and all that kind of stuff. But what I can appreciate about what you're saying about Star Trek, especially with the original series, a big thing that a lot of people don't too much content today is written by committee. Yeah, it'll say this is written and directed by so and so, but like that like they have these rooms of writers that are like doing punch ups, or they got to cram this message in, or they got to cram this thing in. That's why you get these big budget films with all these red herrings in them. Like they get all these red herrings in these shows because there wasn't one brain behind telling you the beginning, middle, and end of the story. Whereas if you're getting real science fiction writers, and maybe you'll have a TV person come in and like help them tidy it up in the format and go, okay, we need to stick a commercial break here, or we need to, this is what we can do or what we can't do. But like this, so it's funny because like you bring up the same era. Like, yeah, I like Westerns. I also like Westerns in the same reason. Like, okay, so you brought up about how there was a submarine story that got replayed into Star Trek, and it worked. And I mean, a lot of times people point out to like George Lucas, like the dogfight sequences were from World War II footage and what he was doing. In Westerns, there's a lot of the same thing. Like, so for example, a lot of Westerns tie heavily in with like samurai movies. So there was like the Seven Samurai is Magnificent Seven is the Seven Samurai. And there's like lots of these different kind of tropes that work because it's a story structure that works. But if you inject those characters in, like, so like, for example, my favorite show of all time is Little House on the Prairie. And that's, to a lot of times people will go like, oh, that's like, come on, it's a girl show, or that's like,
that's a great show.
It's a fantastic show. And
yeah, I remember watching that as a kid, like on
phenomenal show.
Super syndication, whatever TV thing, and I enjoyed watching it.
Oh yeah.
But it was written by a girl, so it's got to be a girl show.
But but the quality of the writing was through the roof. And I do like the fact that, like, so going back to like, why does Star Trek work? Like, why does Star Trek work versus any of the new Star Wars shows? And I think it's because there's it's funny here. I opened the show with my thing being like, I like it when people have creative constrictions, but you're saying it yourself, like that era had its own constrictions and it worked within them and it excelled within it. Whereas like a lot of these streaming shows now, like the show could be 43 minutes this episode, it could be 37 minutes this episode.
Yeah.
It
That's
can go
super annoying these days.
I hate that. And again, I don't really follow a lot of the new content anyway, but like with these Star Wars things, like you have to get this character in because we're going to sell this toy, or we're going to get this talking point in. Whereas like with Star Trek, like you said it, like, yeah, they had this interracial kiss that like that got them headlines. It got them headlines, and we talk about it to today. But I don't feel like that episode was written around an interracial kiss. That just happened to be a thing that would punch it up. Whereas today, if they were trying to shock the audience with something that would be, I don't even know what you can do today to shock the audience anymore.
You'd have a white man and a white woman that had like a functioning relationship.
Yeah. You'd have a family that doesn't divorce and they get along, and the wife actually like listens to the husband. To her husband.
Yeah. They actually care about one another and work together to solve problems instead of this husband being a like retard and the wife being the arbiter of all success.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like Star Trek, the original series, height of the Cold War, right? We're talking about
Chekhov.
Like middle of segregation going on.
Mhm.
and you have a black communications officer, you have a Japanese, we're just out of World War II, a Japanese helmsman, you have a Russian navigator, you have an alien in the science position, you have a Southern boy as your Kentucky boy, as your doctor, and you've got a corn-fed Iowa boy as the captain.
And a
Like,
Scotsman is your engineer. Yeah.
as
Or
Scotsman
did
as
you?
the engineer, and
Yeah.
at no point are they like, oh, you're super black, right? There's an episode in the last season, the Savage Curtain, and they go to this planet, and Spock is confronted with Surak, the father of Vulcan mysticism. Kirk is put together with Abraham Lincoln, and I feel like there's someone else, but Abraham Lincoln ends up coming up to the bridge of the Enterprise, and he's like, "Boy, you're super smart for a negress, aren't you?" And he's talking to Uhura, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that." And she just goes like, "I don't give a shit."
See,
Essentially, she says something
that's the
along the
thing.
lines of like, "Oh, I didn't even think that doesn't even register as a racist comment to me anymore because we're so past racism in the 23rd century." And like that
You
was
would have thought
that was what we were striving for. Like I watched this as a kid and I was like, oh, in the future we're not going to care about these things anymore. We're going to care about like
now we're gonna care about it more.
yeah, the strength of the individual, advancing like our understanding of the world, and we are dead wrong. Like there are so many great episodes about. So like I think about there's an episode where these children are like on a they're a bunch of children. They like rescue them from a planet, I think, because all the parents died suddenly. And then you find out this alien was like corrupting the kids into rebelling against their parents.
I saw that one. Yeah.
And then the crew, the climax of that episode is the guy like shows up on the bridge of the Enterprise and he's like, "We are going to take over this ship, children." And Kirk and the other people are like, "Remember your parents? Your parents loved you. You killed your parents." And the kids all like start to cry and they're just like, "I miss my dad." And that like takes away all the aliens' power. It's just like, yeah, respect your parents, kids, or like you'll get killed in space. Talking about the Hays Code.
Yeah.
There are like those episodes that are silly. There are the episodes that are great. Like I can think of all the final episode, the Turnabout Intruder. This woman steals Captain Kirk's body to like live out this vendetta. The episode's terrible. Should not be the end of the series, but that was the way things were back in the day. It was a show that like. And also, and a great point for Star Trek: The Original Series, and maybe it's a good point, maybe it's a bad point, but there is so much technology in your lives that was inspired by Star Trek. The fact that we have these little touch pads that we can walk around and like doodle, read books and stuff on, inspired by Star Trek. Like it, people looked at that and they're like, "Man, it'd be cool if that technology was real." And then they used their brains and went out and invented it. I think to your point of stuff being written by committee, like Star Trek was so much the vision of one man, Gene Roddenberry, and every episode was the vision of one writer and one director. And like there's a collaborative process in there when you work in those kinds of things. Like there's a give and take, but there's not 35. You look at not just Star Trek, any TV show. You look at the like written by credits during the credits. There'll be like 7 or 8 people, just as boardroom of people being like, "Yeah, well, we need to get my little pet project beliefs about feminism into this thing." Like, what are you talking about?
A lot of that too had to do with the writer's strike. So after the writer's strike, what ended up happening is that's when we got the inundation of the reality television show era.
Yeah,
because you didn't need to have as many writers. And then after they came back to work, it's funny. It's like all the good writers kind of went away, and like. So like one of my favorite shows, I brought up Little House on the Prairie, but The Rifleman with Chuck Connors is just a phenomenal show. And like for somebody who watches a lot of Westerns and like, for me, the perfect length of a movie is 80 minutes. I know that like a lot of people like longer movies or something, but 80 minutes is like my favorite length of a time on a movie. But then like my favorite Westerns, which are part of what's called the Renown cycle, which was done by it was Burt Kennedy was the writer. the Randolph Scott was the main actor in all of them. And Bud Boddicker was the director in all of them. They're all like 70 minutes long. Like all of them are like 70 minutes long. You don't feel like it's short. You don't feel shortchanged. They feel perfect. But like the Rifleman, like for whatever reason, these little 4-minute or whatever like the half-hour show are perfect. Like it's a perfect length. Every episode, I'm like, I don't know how they pull it off, but I guess because you've already established who the characters are, you don't have to like introduce them and stuff. You can actually pull that story off in one thing. But when we looked into them, like all the like episodes were again like written by like classic Western literature writers, like authors of books, and it makes a big difference. And it's like it's something we've lost as the medium of television has just kind of fallen apart. And same with the movies, is that like, again, like, written by committee, man, it feels it. And like, there's like, one of my favorite YouTube channels is those like pitch meetings, which is the guy like just like ripping movies apart based on like all the plot holes and everything that's in them. If you have one writer who's talented and knows what they're doing, and they like had an idea and they put it in, if there's a red herring, it's the fault of the editor, right? It's a fault of the editor, not or the director saying, I'm not going to keep this thing in. But most of the time, a good writer will have all those loose ends tied up. And it sounds to me like that's the same. Like you're probably not going to watch an episode of like Star Trek where they introduce a thing and it doesn't have any bearing on the outcome of the, like if it comes in and you see it and the camera pans over to a thing and you see it, you go, oh, that's going to matter later. And that's the same thing with like Little House on the Prairie. It's like, oh, this character comes in and oh, that person's going to matter later, or this is going to be a show about the doctor, or this is going to be a show about the teacher lady.
And I think that comes to those limitations that we've talked about. Like, you're limited in at the time. They shot all that on film, right? Film, every foot of film costs money. Now they shoot things on your phone, like it costs nothing.
And they do reshoots
and you're on streaming, so it's like, well, we don't really need to hit 42 minutes. So, you were like, well, we're not going to shoot something if it costs money if it's not integral to the plot. And then if the thing's too long, we have to make cuts. We have to show 70 minutes of commercials an episode or whatever the number is. And so TV just, and the other thing, talking about the committee and the writers of things like Star Trek, things like Little House on the Prairie, of the time, they were in their like 30s and 40s. They had lived lives. They had kids. They had jobs. They were doing things, right? Now the average age of Hollywood writers is in their 20s. These are people that graduated from UCLA, got a degree in film studies, and then jumped out there and started writing plays about, or writing TV shows about what they know. And what they know is the 20-something bullshit of living in LA. Like, you haven't done anything. Gene Roddenberry was a pilot in World War II. He literally crashed a plane in Morocco and wandered out of the desert to survive. And then he was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that shit anymore. I'm going to start writing TV shows." And don't get me wrong, Gene Roddenberry has some crazy ass shit. Like, I watched this video recently about, so after Star Trek the original series came out, he like wrote a bunch of pilots for TV shows that got made because every network was like, yeah, we're not going to pass on what could be the next Gene Roddenberry script, and some of them are fucking nuts. But so like, it's not like the guy was just like hitting nothing but homers. He had some wild ideas. This one just happened to be the one that spoke to people. And like, another great thing about this series was they were going to cancel after season 2, and people were like, no, I love this show. They wrote the network, and the network greenlit a season 3 just purely based on people being like, I want this, I want this, I want this. Something we didn't hear of again until like the early 2000s with Chuck, of like people reaching out to the network.
Family Guy was another one that.
Oh, Family Guy, I guess. Yeah. But Family, like, we should really just pretend like that show never happened.
I agree. But it's a good get, because the thing is that you're right. people don't appreciate it for what it is. I'll go and check some of them out. I'm just not a sci-fi guy, and that's not. And you're not a Western guy, and it's not a knock on anything. It's just more of a.
I think it's what you
I
were
guess
introduced to early. You know,
Well, I loved Star Wars growing up, but because that
Star
was
Wars is
mostly
fantasy.
because of the toys and the monsters and all that kind of stuff like that. But like, yeah, Star Wars is fantasy. Star Wars is also samurai, and it's also like it has a bit of a Western kick to it to a degree. But uh, like I think it's funny. So when I took film studies, I didn't truly fall in love with the Western until I took a Western course, like a course on it, and kind of got the nuts and bolts of it. I took it because I liked the professor, and I wasn't fully sold on it, until I got into it. So, but what's interesting is like, so for example, I took westerns, I took melodrama, and I took film noir,
Mm-hmm.
right? And each of those things has kind of like a major theme attached to them, right? So, for example, film noir was definitely a Hays Code product because film noir was a lot of times you had the same beats, right? So you had the femme fatale, the lady who gets the guy to go and do something for her, and it's usually like they're bending the law or they're trying to get away with something, and they never do. They always get caught at the end, and it always blows up in their face. And the film noir movie is the city is a character, right? Like the city is coming in on you. It's claustrophobic. It's all claustrophobic. You're all just kind of like everything sucks. It's all dark. It's everything's like depressing. Whereas the Western is open, and there's no constraints. Everything is the big open. It's all about possibility. It's all about that area over there has not been ranched yet. That area has not been developed yet. We're going to fix this up. We're going to make this better for our kids. And we're going to do this, like we're going to, we're going from the society that wasn't working, and we're going to make it better by starting anew and doing it again. And to a degree, there's a bit of like, I can see a little bit of a similarity there with the Star Trek stuff, because the Star Trek stuff is we've left behind this, we've come away from this, we're going to do it better, we're going to find we're going to find new galaxies, the big open space, and go and do it right. And then again with the melodrama, so the difference between the melodrama and the Western was Western is about male sacrifice. It's always about a male sacrifice, a man going out and having to overcome. He has to do something for his family, or he has to do something for his people, or for his land, or for, like he has to, for his legacy. And the melodrama is about female sacrifice. So it's about the woman having to kind of she has to go and do something for her kids, or because she has to sacrifice her reputation for something, or she has to do something above and beyond to preserve something for her kids. What I've always heard about Star Trek is that it's almost like a combination of all three, because you're on the ship, which is in a way a little claustrophobic, because you're kind of running into each other. You're on the same spot. You're always kind of figuring out, but then you go out on an away mission, and you're dealing with new civilizations and new customs and new things like that. And then you've got the melodrama aspect of it, which is the interpersonal stuff where, and again, why everybody shits on Shatner is because he's a melodramatic actor. It's always above and beyond what is the needed emotion. But again, it's the constraints of the medium. He's selling color TVs. He's selling the sound on these TVs, and at the same time, you got to tell a story that makes you feel in half an hour. And that, I think, is a testament to the creative constraints are a really good thing sometimes, and not all the time. Not like you're saying, like, I don't want a law put in place, but it is kind of nice sometimes to see what people can do It's like haiku. You know, like it's like haiku. It's like, oh, you got to do 5-7-5, right? And it's like, wow, what they could do with 5-7-5, or it's the same with wrestling, right? Like with wrestling, it's like you got the certain beats in every match. Like you got to have the shine, you got to have the hope spot, you got to have you got the false hope spot, you got to have the false finish, you got to like all these kind of things that we like the heat. You got to have all these beats that are in there, even though those are the structures of a match. Not every match is the same. And then also too, like a lot of times people try to cut corners by having like extra blood or swearing or doing all this kind of stuff. No, man, you don't need that. You don't always need that. Like, I mean, sometimes a good story is just a good story. And when it comes
the swearing, the modern Star Trek, they swear all the time. And
because it's like lack of creativity.
They made it 6 series and nobody said, I mean, there would be hells, there'd be dams. Mm-hmm. There was no shit. There was no fuck. There was no. I think Data says "oh shit" in Star Trek Generations,
which was funny at the time. Like, it's a movie,
but it's earned, right? Because this is a character that can't use contractions, that has no emotion, and like they put this emotion chip in him, and he's having problems like understanding and expressing these emotions. But then when the ship is crashing, like he finally understands, this is the time where you say, "Oh shit!" There's a little bit of cursing in Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home.
Well, yeah, the double dumbass on you, right? Like,
and again, there's another payoff in that Kirk is using them right, and Spock can't use them, and then Kirk is walking onto the bridge, and he's like, when are we gonna have those computations or something? And Spock says, 1 damn minute, Admiral. And Kirk turns and looks at him, just shocked. Like there's an arc that was introduced in the movie of double MSNU. That little stupid moment actually pays off into a character moment because Spock is now embracing and understanding his humanity.
Yes,
that's a real written story. Yeah,
it's not gratuitous.
It was just like, oh, we're making a movie. They're gonna say fucking shit and damn and piss and hell and what are shit, piss, fuck, motherfucker, pussy. They're just gonna say the 7 words you can't say on TV because it had to, because we can now. And they just put the F word into, and I love the F word. I use it all the time. I've used it probably 100 times in this episode. They just put it in Star Trek just for the sake of being like, we're on CBS All Access, we can say fuck now. Like, fuck you. You don't need to. Star Trek didn't need it. It was it's like it's the show of an era. It will, I hope one day, like in the pendulum going back and forth, we will start to respect it. And I hope we'll like have a reverence. Those guys are dying. Leonard Nimoy's dead. Shatner's 80. In the next several years, DeForest Kelly's dead. In the next several years, like Shatner's going to die, and we will have lost the trio that made Star Trek work. James Doohan's dead. Nichelle Nichols is still alive. George Takei is still alive, as much as that's worth. But
when you're listing off the diversity of the cast, I was like, you have a gay Asian man at the.
But he wasn't gay. He wasn't gay. And they made his ass gay in the new movies. Like, oh, we're honoring him. And George Takei's like, yeah, you're not honoring me. Sulu was never gay. And they're like, fuck you, fag. He's gay now. And it was like, you motherfuckers, you just throw this shit in there to fucking hit your little diversity quota points. You don't even understand that nobody cares. Sulu wasn't gay. George Takei's gay. Sulu's not gay. Fucking respect it. I have such. There was a reboot series made by Vic Mignogna, who's been slandered in the internet. He's a friend of a friend of the show, Nick Rekieta. Okay. He made a gorgeous ode to Star Trek, the original series, with Star Trek Continues. It's like 10 episodes. They feel like episodes that. It feels like season 4 of Star Trek, the original series. The only thing that's different is the actors are all not on there. Grant Imahara, who is now dead, played Sulu. Vic Mignogna has such a great Kirk. Like, he's the only person I've ever seen to capture Kirk, to the point where sometimes I'd be watching the show, and for half a second, I'd just be like, oh, shit, I'm not watching William Shatner. Because he had all of the he had the movements and the face and the intonation and everything. And for just like, it was like a it was like a deep fake, but it was a deep fake only in my own brain, where for just like half a second my brain painted William Shatner's face on his body and it worked. And then there'd be something, they like cut to something and it would just and you'd fall out of
it. Yeah.
the illusion. And like when people say you can't make those series today, and it's like Star Trek Continues was made in like 2015. It was made from like 2015 to 2017 or something.
Anything can be made today. That's the
Yeah.
thing. With enough talent, anything could be. I could remake Little House today if I wanted to. You know, Razor Fist, former friend of the show, Razor Fist. He had a great rant about Westerns, about how where a lot of these older he's like, we need to bring back the Western because it's a perfect place to put old actors.
Action heroes. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's a perfect place to put. It's the only genre that you can put old action heroes in. Arnold Schwarzenegger would be an amazing Western actor now. Sly Stallone would be an extra, you know, like a good Western actor now. It is the perfect place to put them. And it's saying is that you can still write, we can still write these. It's just like getting them greenlit to get made. Then go fucking make them. You know, like I've talked about this before. Like when I came down here, like I came down here and I made a wrestling show happen because I could afford to make a wrestling show down here. I can't afford to make it up. Like I pitched my show to Netflix. And we came really close, like really close. I was almost, you know, in the Netflix family, which would have ruined my show. But at the same time, like
probably
they were using us as leverage for another show, which was called Lucha Underground, which came out later. Right. So it's kind of like, well, if that falls through, we've got this other thing, but it's not the same, but we're going to use that as just as a bargaining chip. But the thing is that you can make these things happen. When I came down here the second time, I was like, man, I think there's a Western to be told down here in Paraguay. I think there's a really cool setting down here. You set it in after the Triple Alliance War, where like 90% of the male population was wiped out. And you've got yourself a really cool fucking Western genre story where somebody shows up. There's a bunch of women that need help or they're getting, you know, like ransacked all the time. And like this guy comes, like, what's he going to do? Is he going to take advantage of the situation, or is he going to actually, you know, like there's so much you can write, there's so much you can do with that. And it would probably cost me like a lot less to make that happen down here.
We need to fly Tim down there and you guys can make that movie together. And I'll just be like an executive producer up here.
You can come down and get, you know, be our sound guy or something like that.
I don't do recording sound.
Dang it. Anyways, well,
but I will poke holes in your plot, and I'll just be like, this is.
Well, it's only going to be me writing it, so you know there probably won't be as many holes left in the plot. Although it'll probably be like 3 hours long.
Are there going to be like people of color or like we're going to need like definitely some minorities in here?
You don't want me to
it's the gays
the
code.
Brazilians of this
it's the
time.
New code for all media.
Exactly. Well, that was a good get, man.
I've been building to it. I spent all month building to this series. I love it.
To be here.
It's beloved. It's like it is. There's so much of there's been all kinds of History Channel documentaries and stuff about how like the technology that Star Trek inspired, like it really shaped media in a way that other properties haven't. You know, James Bond, similar vintage. Absolutely beloved series. I love so there are bad ones. Most of them are Daniel Craig's. Actually, they're all Daniel Craig's movies. All the others are great. Yeah. Daniel Craig's movies are terrible, and all the other James Bond movies are great. But like it's a beloved franchise, but didn't really change media. Doctor Who, not my bag. It's a little on the homosexual side for my tastes. As a fan of the Birdcage, I know people are like, what the fuck? But holy shit, that show is awful. But beloved by its core group of people, hadn't really changed much. Mm-hmm. Star Wars, 10 years after Star Trek, Star Wars definitely responsible for bringing Star Trek back. If we hadn't had A New Hope, we would not have gotten Star Trek the motion picture, and then we would have not gotten all of the other series. So, you know, mad props there to George Lucas. But hasn't had that kind of like that Star Wars is probably the closest to having like a change, have been a force in our culture. Star Trek has like set our modern way of life together. We're watching big flat TVs in our house because that was when I was on the bridge of the Enterprise. We're typing on the internet on little tablets because that's what they were carrying. We're able to instantaneously communicate with one another with a little tap of a button. Bloop, boop. Call mom. Siri, call mom, because of what like Star Trek made for us. So, Wikipedia is basically
we're eating reconstituted slop that is made to look like a real burger because of the dreams of the replicator.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And so, I just like it deserves its place in the Library of Congress as one of those things that changed the world. Good or bad, it changed the world.
Good job, man.
Yeah, thank you. So, God bless you. God bless William Shatner. And that's it for this week's episode. I'm Tab Burt.
I am Chaco.
Thanks for listening.
Ciao, ciao.
I will ship that in. If you want to call into the voicemail hotline, you can visit us at 704-750-9434 and tell us what you don't get. Or you can visit us in the Discord under voicemail upload, where you can like post an MP3 or anything that is kind of your own uploaded file if you don't want to like give us your phone number. I have a voicemail that has been waiting since October 16th for you, Joel. So we're going to launch with it here.
I think I read the transcript of this one.
Hey, Chaco. Hey, Tab. This is Player 4. And I'm calling because I want to hear the fish story. I was very disappointed, but I didn't get to hear the fish story last time because you got cut off. You guys had way too many stories to tell. And I was desperately waiting for a month to hear how the fish trap went. So I'm hoping this will at least prompt the story, at least a quick version. Did Chaco get his fish trap, and did it work? This is Player 4. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Awesome. Somebody cared about my fish trap. Yeah, I could definitely tell that story. Real quick, I guess I'll because I don't want to eat up too much time with it. I ended up trying out a few different fish traps. I bought one on eBay. We commissioned two people to make them down here, but they never ended up making them. So we got this one that's like a little bit of a tenty type thing. And we tried putting it out there and it only catches the little fish. And we ended up figuring out that we have a whole other species of fish that we never intended to be. I don't know how it got in there. It's a little like long kind of snake fish looking thing that's kind of gross, but apparently you can eat. So we get those, we catch in those, but we figured out a strategy. I actually had, so I hired a guy to go with my custodian because I wasn't going to fucking do this. He went into the water and we got this like big, like shade, like this, we call it media sombra, but it's like a big shade cloth. And they went in and they carried this shade cloth in almost like a big net. And they walked through the whole pond trying to catch these tilapia in it. And the tilapia outsmarted them and got so they couldn't actually catch any of the big tilapia in there. So we put them into the smaller pond and they were able to get a bunch out. We were trying to empty out one of the ponds because we were going to put in a different type of fish called pacu, which is like a vegetarian piranha. And they were in there like just like up to their nipples in their with this like media sombra, dragging it around. They were at it for like 90 minutes, but they did catch a bunch of fish this way. And we thought we had emptied it out, but apparently they didn't. And a bunch of the tilapia are still in there. And when we put the pacu in, I think the tilapia went after a lot of the pacu, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, but, just like the Sona went after the Baku in Star Trek Insurrection.
Oh, see, there we go, bro. Tied in. But we did figure out a new trick. And that is this. It requires 4 people. And what we do is we build a little triangle in the pond. So one person in one corner, one person in the other corner, one person in another corner, and they get in the they don't have to get in the water. They just disturb the water in this triangle, and it's to scare the fish into the open corner where there's a guy with a net. And so we just keep scaring them over into that corner, and we were able to catch like 25 fish, 30 fish at a time. So we finally figured it out. And man, like now that I figured it out, like, dude, the ROI on this fish is so awesome. It cost me $1 to get a baby like pacu fish, right? It takes me 4 months to grow it to full size. I spend about $20 a month on food for all of them. I bought like 100 of these things. So $100 with $20, $20, $20. So
$180.
$180. $180 gets me 100 fish. And when they're full grown, I get over $20 a kilogram for these things. And so I'm getting somewhere between $20 and $30 per fish off of $1 of fish and $80 worth of things. So like the ROI on this is like, it's massive. So I'm hoping that like I can get a handle on this and like figure out the system really well. But like, yeah, that 100 fish can turn into basically like, 2,500, $3,000 off of $180. That's not bad.
You need like a robot that just not like, just a mechanism, right? That will paddle the water.
I could probably do
corners.
that.
And that way you can just stand. Then you don't have to bring this. I'm trying to.
Well, I don't mind creating work for people though, and like having them come in, because that'll cost me a lot less than a robot. I don't.
Well, I mean, you're just talking about like a counterweighted system on.
Oh, that could work. Yeah,
because you could just counterweight those and like have them on a rope, so you pull them, they just go like whack 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 whack.
I don't mind that idea.
Then you scoop.
From an aesthetics point of view, I'd rather not have too much mechanical stuff sitting in my pool. But yeah, that could work. I could do some sort of pulley system or something like that. Now, the other thing is that I've managed to build a really cool aquaponics system where we've got a bunch of our like lettuce and beans and arugula and what else we got in there? Rosemary, like a couple of herbs and stuff. But like now that we've sort of almost perfected the aquaponics system, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start replicating that and doing more of that. And then once I've got the tilapia, I can take some of the tilapia out and actually build an aquaponics system that doesn't require my whole pond. And then I can get the tilapia out real easy just by sticking in like a big net and just like fishing them out of the tank that I put on there. But yeah, seeing these guys trying so hard to get the fish out the first time was freaking hilarious to me. The trap sort of works. We sort of use it now to get the smaller ones out and then put them into the pond that has a little bit more space for the little ones so they can grow. So like we just kind of use the trap as like kind of a slow feed to move to graduate fish to a bigger pond so they can actually grow into it. So yeah. I hope I didn't disappoint. Was this player 4 that
yes.
Thanks for following up. I'm glad you were interested in the fish story. And if you guys like fish news, I can keep bringing fish news in each time I come in to tack on to the Ricada news stuff. So yeah.
Well, here's one from I believe this is from Illinois.
Why will Eddie open the door?
Someone's trying to kill Andy, and they're calling into our voicemail. Let us know.
Oh, dear. I hope they got help. I hope that one didn't sit for too long in our voicemail syncs. Maybe we should probably check in on that situation.
Nah, that one's from Saturday. Here's another one also from Saturday.
Here's what I don't get. Alex Stein. He's just weird. He's got a voice like a cartoon character. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like for people to go through life with a voice like that. You know? What the fuck? Jesus fucking Christ!
Got into Andy's.
Holy Jesus fucking Christ, Tab.
Got a little bit of a domestic happening.
Okay, so those two voicemails are definitely related, and I assume Andy's dead. Unfortunately,
Poor Andy.
F in the chats, boys, for Andy. Here, and we'll wrap it up with another one from Player 4.
Hey, Tab and co-host. This is Player 4. Last week you said to call in and tell you about the complaints and the stuff about the show because it's past episode 12. So I thought I'd do that. I thought I'd give you my 2 cents. I really like the show. I really like the new format, but there's one thing that I don't like, and that's the news segment. Now, I never really like the news. I usually skip it because it's just so jarring and it doesn't fit in the show. But I don't know. I think you cut down to 2 problems total because you wanted to turn down the length of the show. And looking at the run times, it seems like you trimmed it down, but barely at all. And the news segment still doesn't really fit. It's just kind of stuck there in the middle. And you talk about the same stories that every other podcast does, the weird news. Like a good example is that story about how bees are categorized as fish in California. Like every fucking podcast talked about that story. So
I didn't know that.
I don't know. I think if you're trying to make some more changes and you want to trim down the length a little bit, I think it'd be a good idea to just cut the news. But I don't know. See you later.
So I will. I'll give an inside baseball. I fucking hate the news segment. Holy shit, I hate the news segment. I hated the news segment when Buck did it. I hated the news. I didn't care for the news segment when Tim did it. But it's something we've always done. So I was just like, well, I'm fucking trapped doing this news segment. If people don't like the news segment, we don't have to do it.
I can vote with you against the news segment. I'm fine with ditching the news segment. I'd be back in my house with my wife right now if not for the news segment.
We could just be like, all right, that's a great issue. Patreon.com, subscribe.com / HWIDG. All right, back in some issues.
No complaints from me.
So okay.
Mr. Kill Everything just said Fish News voted up. So now we're torn. Now I think we should throw it out there to maybe. Do you have somewhere that you could throw a poll?
Yeah, we can throw a poll up on Patreon and let people vote. Because, I like Dead Cook sends me news. Tim brings his own news. Alex Gangrenously on Discord sends me news. Like I pull stuff out of the RNN portal. But we absolutely don't have to do it. So
I'd be fine without it. I'm totally fine without it. I don't know if I'm like him by skipping it, but he's right. There's definitely times where it does jar it up a bit because you're trying to get through a few things at once and trying to make sure that it's punchy and stuff like that. I maybe give it a go of trying without it. I'm not sure if you go without it that there's going to be people crying about bringing it back, but we'll see. Throw it to the other co-hosts as well, and because at least now, because there's 5 of us, you got a tiebreaker vote in there, and you've probably got a veto. So yeah, I'm open to
no, there are no vetoes on the show, Joel.
No vetoes.
We don't have any vetoes on the show.
All right.
So when Buck left and I was like, Tim, you want to join the show? We'll do this, but I don't want to do the news segment. And Tim was like, I think the news segment is great. We should keep doing it. And I said, well, if we're doing the news segment, you're fucking doing the news because I'm not doing it. I hate it. It's so Tim did the neus, and that was the thing. And I think what worked was he would bring in news and I would react. Now I read the news and react. So I don't know. There's like I think this is a conversation that probably should happen not on the air, but that's
well, really it's after the show is already finished. Technically, there are people, myself included, who sometimes maybe don't
duck out at the voicemail.
Yeah, don't always finish.
That's true. So I'm definitely not married to it. I'll post. I'll put in the description. I'll put a link to a Google poll as to whether or not you like the news, and go and vote on that. It'll be at the bottom of the description. And if you like the news, vote yes. And if you don't like the news, vote no. And we'll let democracy make a choice. We'll put in the HWIDG code, which bans news from the show. No news is good news. Anyway. Oh, we did in the Discord. We now have a channel called News for Fags, which is where all of the election news can go, so that I don't have to. I don't have any. I like every Discord I'm a part of. I just have all these muted channels because it's just like stupid shit I don't want to hear about. And
I sign into the Discord like once every like 8 weeks, maybe tops.
I sign in like once every 8 minutes. It seems like definitely addicted to Discord. But like here's what I don't get Discord. I've left all the channels unmuted so I can kind of see what's going on.
Mhm.
News for Fags muted. I don't want to know. I'm so like we made it 8 days. It was 8 whole days before Trump was like, I'm running for president in 2024 because I'm going to be the greatest. Like, okay, great. Thank you for giving me 8 days of that fucking election coverage. You fucking fat sack of shit. You fucking do nothing bastard. I'm like undoing all the shit I did earlier in the episode that'll get us kicked off of YouTube by just shitting on Trump right now.
There you go.
God, such a fucking worthless president. Oh yeah, I'm not going to pass any of these omnibus spending bills. What is that? Fucking write the check. Fat
Platinum plan.
I'm not going to do anything, but I'm going to send you home and not be letting you work your fucking jobs and listen to goddamn Anthony Fauci like a fat bastard who is now out of the news like, I never advocated lockdowns, you little troll motherfucker.
See, I can't comment anymore because one of the voicemails that was directed at me after my first episode back said that because I'm Canadian, I'm not allowed to comment on U.S. politics, even though U.S. politics pretty much dictate what happens all over the planet, especially here too. The U.S. embassy in Paraguay is fucking gigantic, and like that you guys send your fucking education programs that are all about like rainbow flags, and people here are like, what? I don't want anything to do with this. This is not us. And like, yeah, it matters, but yeah, I'm gonna. The U.S. elections are tired and boring to me because it's just like, yeah, they cheated.
Trash.
Yeah, it just cheated. Everybody cheats. That's what
this last
is.
midterms where it was like, there's a lot of irregularities happening in Arizona. Can you believe it? Like, yeah, they did it in the last one. Why wouldn't they do it again? What are you, an idiot?
They've been probably doing it all since the 90s, man.
If you went to the grocery store, right, and you got bananas. Like, let's say small, right? You had bananas and you forgot to scan them, and you walked out and you're like, oh shit, I got these bananas for free on accident. Damn it. And then the next time you go to the store, you like accidentally steal the bananas again. Are you not going to start thinking like, well, no one's checking my cart. Maybe I could steal more shit.
or if you like get kicked out of a country and then
I do have a rainbow of flags behind me. With all the colors of flags that matter.
Places that, yeah, I love that. I pointed it out to my wife as well. I'm like, yeah, man, I got representation on 3 of those flags on there. That's perfect.
Yeah,
and not one of them is that fucking maple leaf.
So wait, no, that's Alberta.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's the red ensign, and then Paraguay is right here, right? Yeah,
isn't it right behind you? Yeah, that's a wonky Paraguay flag, but I like it.
It's mounted. It's actually mounted
that's
to
the
the
one.
side.
No,
Yeah.
the one right behind your head, the one next to the U.S.
Oh,
flag.
that one.
That's
What
the
is that?
Paraguayan flag. I don't know what that one is. It might be a Paraguayan flag.
I think that's Missouri's flag. They're pretty similar.
Mm.
Anyway,
So
well, that's the
anyways,
episode.
I love the great having this time with you, man.
Remove the news, and each co-host can bring in something to replace it. I'm thinking a strip show.
Hey, Hayes Code era. I'm gonna no more.
Check out my sweet V-neck I'm wearing under here.
Oh man!
All right. Well, that's the episode.
Awesome.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks,
See you
guys.
guys next week.
Cheers.